We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Welcome to La Plata Electric Association's February board meeting. Let's go ahead and start this off as we usually do. Please stand with me and say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Let's see. Can I get a motion to approve the agenda for today? So moved. Kohler, thank you. Second by Joe. Any discussion on today's agenda? Rachel.
I add an update to executive session on the tri-state financials.
Make a motion to modify the agenda.
I move to modify the agenda to add a discussion on tri-state financials to our executive session.
Thank you. Joe, you seconding? Okay, moved and seconded. So all in favor of that agenda modification? Say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so then any other modifications to the agenda? Hey, seeing none, all in favor of the agenda with Rachel's modification, raise your hand and say aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstentions? Okay, we have an agenda. Let's see, next thing on the agenda is our safety moment. We're going to let Elizabeth provide that this morning as our host for today.
Morning, I'm Elizabeth Howe. I work here at La Plata Electric Association. Welcome. It's nice to have so many people here today. Just a couple of quick items I'd like to point out. Take a look around you for exits. We have one over here in the kitchen, there's one back in the corner. There's the one who came in, and then there's also one that leads out to the yard right over here. So should something unfortunate happen, please make your way calmly to an exit. We have two muster points once you're outside. One is there's a warning sign kind of in the corner of the parking lot over here, and also a muster point up by the rear entrance gate. Another bright orange sign. So again, should something happen in the building, ask you to just pick an exit to go out, take your time and get to one of those muster points. We also have public restrooms. One is right outside the door here. It is a unisex bathroom. The other one is through the doors. That is a staff hallway. So if you do use the restroom through those doors, you will notice staff working. We just ask that you quietly use the restroom, come back, and that is about it today. So we're glad you're here. And
all right, thanks for keeping us safe. And thanks for keeping us focused on safety. That's one of the main points of having a safety moment is for us to continually be aware that not necessarily us, but staff work in a dangerous environment and safety is paramount. So we try and stay focused on that. With that, we'll move into agenda item 2, which is member comments and concerns. Graham, will you start us off with the preamble to that?
Yes. The board encourages comments about the cooperative from its members. The board will take all member comments under consideration, but will not necessarily provide a response during the member comment period. The board asks that each participant's comments pertain to cooperative business. Those wanting to address the board during the public comment period are granted 5 minutes to address their topics. Public comment is limited to 1 hour in total under policy 126. Lengthy comments to the board should be submitted in writing. Formal complaints must be filed in writing and submitted in compliance with applicable board policy. Comments from the public will be directed to the entire board, not to any individual. No personal attacks shall be allowed. Failure to follow these requirements may cause the public comment period to be terminated. Copies of our cooperative policies and procedures on public comment and filing complaints are available on the cooperative website.
Thanks, Graham. Yeah, so obviously we have a big room today. We have quite a few people online. Not necessarily sure how many people online are going to want to comment. As it says, speakers are limited to 5 minutes, but we also limit the total time to 1 hour. So I imagine not everybody needs 5 minutes. And if you don't need 5 minutes, please try and leave time for other people to use that. You know, if we stay in the 2 to 3 minute range, we should be able to get through this and hear everybody's comments. My only other addition to that would be If we've already heard your particular comment from another person, you might just keep your version of it shorter, and just refer to comments that were previously made, all in the interest of hearing as many different viewpoints and from as many different people as possible. I will move back and forth between the in-person audience and the Zoom audience, so no one feels like they're being ignored. And then the only other thing I would do is ask for your apology, because I will point to people whose hands are raised, and I know that's maybe not the best manners, but that's the best way I can think of to call people out, because I don't know everyone's name. I see a hand online, so we'll start there, and then everybody in the audience get prepared to put your hands up when you're ready to speak. So looks like Lori. Can we turn Lori on? Lori, if you want, you have the floor.
Hi. Yes, I have lived in Durango for 32, almost 33 years now, and I have seen La Plata Electric go through a lot with Tri-State. Tri-State has used our ratepayers' money to lobby to gut the Clean Air Act, to lobby for coal, $200,000 a year of our ratepayers' money since Barbara Walls has been on the executive board at Tri-State. That equals over 15 years, something like $3 million of our ratepayers' money being used to lobby to gut the Clean Air Act, to gut mercury emissions regulations. We have a advisory in La Plata County where people are not supposed to eat more than one fish out of our waters there because of the mercury pollution. And Tri-State has been using our ratepayers' money to lobby against mercury regulations. And I am all for getting out of our contract with Tri-State. They're greedy, corrupt corporation. They're liars, and they do nothing but try to steal our money and then get what they can out of it. And they're doing these backroom deals where not just after they leave Tri-State, they get hired on with the coal and gas industry and the oil industry, making hundreds of millions of dollars for doing what they're doing at Tri-State. I don't want to be connected with them. I have seen it over the years, all the things that they're doing to us and to our environment. And also, Tri-State is supposed to be getting up to 70% of renewable energy, but that's only if the Infrastructure Reduction Act is still in place. And we know that the Trump administration is trying to gut that. And so there is a possibility, a huge, very large possibility that none of that is going to come to pass. And Tri-State is still going to be sticking us with the charges for coal and gas. So I personally have installed a 12 kilowatt array on my house in town. It's my third solar array on houses that I have owned. I am looking towards getting a battery backup system. I also have rental properties in town that I want to put solar on and try to help our community to do what we can for our children and grandchildren and the environment. And that's what I want. I'm pushing for that. And I think it's the right thing to do. And we will save money by not staying with Tri-State. I think we need to divest completely eventually from Tri-State because they're doing nothing but ripping us off. And that's all they have done the entire time we've been connected with them, preventing us from having more than 5% of our energy, alternative energy. That is baloney. We should have been able to have free reign to do whatever we wanted. We could be supporting local solar industries, local electricians, local people to do these jobs and have our own solar power in our communities, powering our rooftops, our school district rooftops, our city buildings, our county buildings, all sorts of places that don't even have to be on land that's not in use. We could use existing places, and the infrastructure is already there that we can use those lines. There's no reason to stay with Tri-State. I am voting to divest, and I think,
In your 5 minutes, so wrap it up if
Okay.
you can.
okay, La Plata Electric is doing a great job divesting and getting out of that contract, and I vote to continue forward on that. Thank you.
All right, thanks for your participation today. Let's go to the room here. Give us, sorry, I didn't mention it ahead of time. Give us your name and either the district where you are or sort of the location where you live.
Dave Peters, I'm District 3 in Durango. First off, I wanted to make a request. I get on Smart Hub about every day. And I look at my hourly energy consumption from LPEA. I try to then balance my utility usage with my solar usage, with my solar battery usage, make adjustments, and then see what that does. Right now, that update for Smart Hub is once a day. I request you look into the feasibility to make that, say, twice a day or as frequently as you can. That would be helpful. Secondly, I appreciate you holding in-person meetings. I think that's the right way to go. Albeit the personal information and the photos you take of us to enter this meeting is certainly over the top. I hope you continue to have in-person meetings. The third thing is, I think it's good for this Coffee with Chris meetings in various parts of the county, 2 counties. However, they're all during business hours. We as members work. We can't go to those things, many of us. I'll reiterate my request from the last meeting is you hold a town hall meeting in the evening with members so you can give all the facts and arguments on why you should buy out of Tri-State and let the members ask questions. So that's all I've got.
Thank you, Dave. I'll go back up to the Zoom. It looks like Gwen, you're next up and you have the floor.
Thank you. My name is Gwen Unger and I live in Forest Lakes in District 4. I'd like to thank the board and staff of LPA for the hard work they're putting in, making sure that our future power supply is as inexpensive, reliable, and renewable as possible. I get somewhat irritated when I hear people saying that Tri-State's power is more reliable, since power supply reliability is managed by a FERC, a federal agency, NRECA, not by the individual suppliers. In any case, keep up the good work. My only disappointment is that the Tri-State buyout didn't happen a couple of years sooner. It was apparent even when I was on the board in 2020 that Tri-State was not the most cost-effective supplier for LPA. I've heard people touting the steps that Tri-State is taking to generate more renewable energy. But as Lori said earlier, with the Musk Mafia seemingly on a goal to break everything, it's not clear that Tri-State will get all the money they were promised. And on a different topic, I understand why the LPA rates need to go up. I haven't seen the details, but I'd like to encourage the board to do everything possible to keep rates low for our poorest residents. As our country experiences more and more income inequality, meaning that the rich get richer and the poor get poorer, people struggle to pay their bills, especially in a high-cost area like Durango. Having a lower rate per kilowatt hour for the first power usage each month and then increasing the rate for people and businesses that are using more might make sense. And I say this knowing full well this would probably increase my family's rates. We recently replaced our propane furnace with a couple of electric heat pumps, and then we have 2 electric vehicles and no gasoline vehicles. So we use a lot of electricity. But if we have to pay a bit more, that's fine. Of course, we don't pay anything for propane or gasoline now. So please keep up the good work and thank you for what you're doing.
Okay, thanks for being here today, Gwen. J. Paul? I know a few names.
J. Paul Brown, and I think I'm in District 2. I want to thank you for the in-person meeting. We need to be able to look you in the eye. And this is good. And I'm glad that COVID is over and we can have these personal meetings. That's important to us. I want to welcome Representative Hanson to our community. Thank you for your service in the state legislature. The tri-state, I call it sellout, because I think it's a sellout to the members of La Plata Electric. $200 million, we're gonna pay it. You know, tri-state has done everything that the state and everybody else has asked them to do to bring in green energy. And to leave them, I think, is a huge mistake. I liken it to a group of trees. If you look up on the mountain, you see that those trees that are vibrant and are growing, they grow in a certain area. Together. And a single tree out there is all bent up, and I feel that that's what's gonna happen to La Plata Electric. And I think that's what's happened with United. And I think our rates are gonna go up. It went up this 7.2%. You know, I've seen in other electric co-ops that have gotten away, their increases have been much more. And I want to tell you, it's personal to Debbie and I. You know, I was in the legislature and I didn't get rich like I've heard some of these people. I want to know where my money is, but I'm still in the ranching business. We're in the ranching business. And this gentleman that just spoke that wanted us to pay more money than everybody else. You know, let me tell you, it is hard to make it in ranching. We've got a sprinkler system. We use a lot of electricity. Our electricity bill is $4,000 a month. You can check it out in the summer. And for that to go up, we're going to be in. I don't know that we can make it. That's personal for us. Thank you very much for having us. I think the in-person meeting, it's important. You can see by the crowd that's here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. In the back.
Thank you. My name is Mark Walsh. I've been a customer of La Plata Electric for 7 years. Durango, I'm in District 1, like 9. Thanks for the opportunity to speak. I appreciate all the work that you're doing involved. To look at new portfolio of energy, I know there's a lot of work in that, a lot of nuance, a lot of complexity. However, when I look at this proposal, I'm kind of coming in late to the game. To me, what I'm looking for is an increase in reliability of service, decrease in cost, and the continuation of a safe operating system. And I'm just not seeing where any of that augmentation is taking place in this proposal. I think we can all agree that the basic needs that we all have, food, water, shelter, etc., is only equal by electricity. It's our lives depend on it. People in hospitals, people sick, oxygen, ventilators, etc. And this is the most critical utility and service that is provided in this community. And I think we can get really cavalier in our approach to, we want green energy, we want sustainability. Who doesn't? I mean, who wouldn't want a pollution-free energy environment? I think everybody is in favor of that. What I'm not in favor of is increasing the risk of reliability through this transition mechanism in the working through. I think our reliability goes down. We already know our costs are. And what's happened to utilities that have been put under pressure financially and cost cutting begins because the rates are going up? Just look at the largest utility in the country, Pacific Gas and Electric. They have cut their maintenance, operating costs, et cetera, and what's resulted? Wildfires, death, destruction of homes, et cetera. Keep the eye on the ball. Reliability, safety, cost effectiveness. Your green venture is a transitional period that puts us all at some degree of risk. There's other issues about this, and there's probably a lot more detail, but having been in the energy industry and knowing how optimization contracts work, they're very, very complex. Very complex. Mercuria is going to have 1,000 customers. And when the polar vortex moves into the country, whatever dynamic changes, operating conditions, companies are scrambling. I don't have to take you back very far to February, 4 years ago this month. Texas was hit with a polar vortex. People died, 269 people died. The energy capital of the world, Houston, Texas, did not have enough power. My children, my grandchildren were refugees for a week to 10 days, going from home to home, shelter to shelter, trying to find water. A newborn baby and 3 other toddlers, young grandkids. This is serious stuff. You're putting us in a position where we're testing, we're transitioning, we want to feel good on green energy. It's not making me feel good.
1 minute left.
Pardon me?
1 minute left, if you would.
I'll conclude with, I really think that an all above portfolio, look what our nation runs on. Nuclear, oil, gas, coal, etc. The transition is fine, incrementally improved. This is just so small scale. I'm not even sure, we looked at a natural gas peaking facility in the middle here of the San Juan, the prolific hydrocarbon premise that we reside in? Natural gas peaking is the most reliable peaking service there is on the U.S. grid. Thank you for your time and attention.
Thank you, Mark. Just move over to the back there. Thank you, yes.
Scale Ruggles, District 4. I guess, I understand the energy transition you guys are trying to make, and it makes sense. I mean, let's clean up the environment. But I also see, well, let me back up. My mother retired from what is now United Power, used to be REA, the Union Power. And my uncle was, I don't know, he was a big wheel there. He lived right on site. They used to have housing right there. And so we still have friends there, and they say that their transition is not quite going as they had hoped. But there's one thing that they did that was quite interesting, is that they were very forthright with their customers. And they are telling their customers, yeah, we got to raise the rates. We have these costs, these costs, these costs. And in public meetings, they've let their customers know, or I should say their members know, that their rates are going to go up for this transition. But it's all for the better good of this whole service area. And I don't feel Platte Electric has done that. When I asked for their plan, their projected costs, which are just assumptions, you said, oh, we're in lawsuits, we can't provide any of that. We would give our competition, which is Tri-State, a competitive advantage. You're not there no more. So why are we not laying it out on the table? This is what our costs are. We're going to spend this capital on solar facilities. We're going to enter these contracts, and we're lay it out on the table for us to see. That's all I really want to see. If it works, it works. And I can look at it and tell you it works. Used to manage the Williams plant out on County Road 307. And we did a lot of things like that. In fact, we were one of your largest providers of green energy. They probably still are. So We get hundreds of millions of dollars in projects. So please, let's provide the information. And if it doesn't work 5 years down the road, we can look back and say, we did this, this, and this wrong. But if you don't provide that, then there's gonna be people really pissed off and coming back and replacing this board because my power bill's up 50% in 5 years. So please, let's be a little more forthright. Let's get Dan or whoever, put all the information on the table so that we can see it. Thank you.
Thank you, Dale. Let's go far left in the front there. Yes, please.
I'm Karen Pontius. I live in District 3. And I'd like to echo everything that the first speaker, Lori Bryan, said, rather than go over everything she said, and then also Gwen Unger. Very much in favor of the things that the board's doing to get us out of Tri-State and move forward. So keep on keeping on. I took a couple notes. The Texas grid failure. Texas is not even on our grid, so look to Texas for the reasons for that. That has nothing to do with what's going on here. Keep up the good work. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, Karen. In the back?
My name is Michael Bowney. We're a small farm and ranch, Marina Mesa, District 2. I'm here to voice my support for LPA sourcing of local energy. I've personally been involved in over 2 gigawatts of electricity infrastructure projects throughout the U.S. I've experienced firsthand the economic impact and the job creation of these type of projects in rural communities similar to ours. Pipe fitters, electricians, skilled and unskilled labor, various construction jobs, including sheep ranchers growing their flocks to mow the lawn and utility scale solar, all the way down to the food trucks that are there to support those construction workers. There was an economic boom in this county, early teens, basically since 2014 has been in decline. So there's a tax revenue shortfall. Opportunity to build local projects help restore that. So I'm very confident our community, this board, we can recreate and continue that positive economic development with more durable electricity projects, including geothermal and other clean, firm generation technologies. So just to reiterate my support for LPA's local procurement strategy. I think it's excellent. I'm very excited to be part of the economic development.
Thanks, Michael. One over. Yes, you. Oh, me? Emily, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Emily, live in D3, and I just am coming to say that I think LPA made the best decision for its members in leaving Tri-State. And I just want to read 3 main reasons that I believe that. The first is that Tri-State has a long history of environmental degradation and pollution. That's not the only reason for leaving Tri-State. The second is that the contract was very restrictive and expensive and continued to hurt members. The third is that Tri-State has a very outdated governance plan and an unstable business plan going into the future. So on the topic of environmental sustainability, Tri-State has a long history with coal and gas that sticks member co-ops with the price tag of dirty coal energy. Even with its movement towards renewable energy that's been very recent, members are still responsible to pay the cost of those stranded assets. That's over $4 billion in debt. So the members are stuck with that stranded asset cost. So LPA, by leaving Tri-State, is alleviating the members' responsibility for those stranded assets. LPA members care a lot about renewable energy and sustainability. And Tri-State's power supply did not serve LPA members on that front. The contract was extremely expensive. Our community cares about local generation, which we were just talking about, and it was limited to 5% under the previous contract. Additionally, Tri-State has recently asked all of its member co-ops to re-sign a longer and more restrictive contract. This does not allow LPA members the flexibility that we deserve. Not to mention, the contract that LPA would be locked into is paying increasingly high rates. Tri-State continues to raise member rates. This is a consistency across co-ops. So it's somewhat like renting a house versus buying a house. We would have continued to spend our money into Tri-State, a group based in Denver with lots of other co-ops, rather than investing money into LPEA. Finally, Tri-State, LPA made the best choice for its members by leaving Tri-State because of the governance structure. LPA, or Tri-State's governance structure allows minority co-ops to dictate the future of Tri-State rather than giving a proportional size of the member co-op to control it. So LPA was being controlled by lots of small co-ops that weren't serving LPA members. Leaving Tri-State allows our co-op to best serve its own members. Additionally, Tri-State is only staying afloat as a business because it is relying on federal government subsidies to help pull it out of its debt. These new era funding are appearing more and more to be unlikely, and the federal government is slashing this budget. So I am skeptical of Tri-State's ability to stay afloat as a business, making it a very poor business partner. I want to add a couple other comments here that it's been great to see folks here. Reliability is federally regulated, so that concern is something that you should take up with the federal government and the agency's budgets that are being slashed, not the co-ops here. Additionally, Tri-State has continued to raise member rates, so that is another Tri-State issue as well. And finally, I've been at almost every LPA meeting for the last 3 years, and it's so exciting to see a bunch of folks here. I'm really, really happy about it. These meetings have been in person for a lot of the part, especially the meetings leading up to the buyout. So I really encourage folks to continue to come. It's great to be here. And I encourage folks to stay past this comment period and actually listen and learn, because they do great presentations. We can learn a lot more. So rather than commenting and leave, continue to come and listen, because they're great public meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, Emily. I see you in the middle there.
My name is Bruce Schisler, District 2. Excuse me. Just like to say I'm opposed to the leaving of Tri-State. I think that if you look at renewable energy, as attractive as it is to some people, it will not carry the day with electric grid. With the advent of AI, the advent of electric automobiles, the need for charging stations, people like Jay Paul, with his need for electricity to keep the country fed. The renewable energy isn't just, it's not going to carry it. And I met a person one time whose daughter worked for the electric or the wind farm up in Rock Spring. Her job was to go around in the morning to all the wind towers, pick up the dead birds, throw them in the back of the truck, dispose of them. She was not allowed to discuss it with the public and especially the press. Now, like I said, this is a person that I met, but this is daughter. And anyhow, and I think one of the other things that LPEA needs to be concerned of is the hardening of the electric grid. Now, I don't know if LPA can do that much about it themselves, but as a veteran, I'm kind of concerned about that, because you take one well-placed missile with a warhead from Iran, China, or anywhere else, and that detonates at altitude, it can wipe out the entire electric grid over about a quarter of the United States. And nobody's doing anything to harden the grid right now. So I think that's something that should be looked at. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Let's go in the front. Thanks.
My name is Lisa Zimmerman. I'm District 4. I'm actually here to represent single parent households and low income households, which is something that's not been represented here. I don't hear it represented quite a bit in this county. The effect that the rates are going to have on us. This rate increase is huge for us. I mean, it's just a little bit. Everybody's complaining about the unhoused and everything and why they're there. What's going to happen when single parents can't pay their electric bill? What's going to happen to those kids? They're going to have to make a choice. Do I pay my electric bill or do I pay my rent? You know, do we want to have families with little kids in there with no heat? I know I'm struggling. I have a cough right now because I'm not running my heaters because I'm trying to already keep my electric bill as low as possible. How many other households in this county are feeling like that? You know, I go to a lot of meetings. I sit on a board myself, and so I appreciate everybody here doing what you're doing because I get it. I work a full-time job. I sit on a board, and I volunteer as much as possible in my community. I'm also paying for my home, my bills, and then I'm paying for my son's, who is a freshman at CU Boulder this year. or pre-med. You know, so I'm paying bills here and I'm paying bills there and I'm struggling. You know, we're not getting pay increases at work. We don't make enough money to actually survive in this county, but we do, barely. Add another $20 to our bill, you know, we may not make it. And I'm doing really well compared to a lot of other single parents in this community. I know I've been doing it for 23 years in La Plata County. I've been paying for electricity for 23 years, and this has always been one of the hardest bills for anybody in my minority. So I just want to make you guys aware, and I would challenge any of you to take 1 month and live off the income that the rest of us do and try to pay your bills.
In the back there? Yeah,
Hi, I'm Sam Perry. I work at the BYLAW Hydro Project, just below the BYLAW Reservoir. It's a 5 megawatt project, been running pretty consistently for the last 30 years. And we're in the process of renegotiating a contract. If we stuck with Tri-State, we would not be able to sell that power to LPA based off their, I think, heavy-handed contract that doesn't allow for local generation, whether it be fossil-based, renewable, or whatever. So I'm really thankful to the board for their foresight to kind of take the initiative and put us as members in a better position where we can actually take advantage of some of these local resources like the BYLAW Hydro Project. And yeah, I just hope I get the chance to work with you guys.
thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
All the way on this side over here.
Good morning, Brad Blake, District 2. Thank you again very much for holding in-person meetings. I know this young lady said not a lot of people show up, but I remember being here at numerous meetings where a lot of people did show up. And frankly, a lot of people, like the young lady that just spoke, work every day and can't show up at an hour like this. It really is why I'm here to talk. I'm in the middle of a workforce housing project in Bayfield, and this rate increase, small though it may be to the board members here, hurts the poorest among us, the people who work here in our county, the employees that have 3 and 4 jobs, the businesses that are having a hard time finding people just to come to work. People that are trying to decide whether to pay for gas in their car, their electric bill, or their food bill. These are people, I'll give you one example. One of our first purchases of one of our homes in Bayfield was a nurse, and she barely got in. This rate increase will hurt her. So I would encourage you to think about your rate increases, what it does to the poorest among us. I talked to Mr. Compton about the rate increase, what it meant to the government of La Plata County this year. They're budgeting $200,000. Last night I was in a Bayfield town hall meeting. Their rate increase is going to be 10%. At the meeting last night, they said that they were not notified until the increase until yesterday. Some of your biggest purchasers of power, like the tribe, the college, the hospital, other big purchases of power were not even notified until just the last few days about increases. I personally asked them if they knew about it, and they said no. So I think you owe it to the members of the co-op to have an open discussion about those prices. I guess one of the biggest things that I want to close with is I don't think any of us in this room are opposed to cleaner energy. I've been in the solar business. I love hydro. There are many things coming that I think are going to completely pass wind and solar. And that's going to leave this group in a lurch if you're not proactive. Things that may not even be quite on the radar yet, they're going to happen. I've seen them. I've been in the business long enough to see things grow leaps and bounds. Personally, and somebody mentioned this idea of having to pay for things long into the future, like coal or other forms of power. Solar has the same problem. When solar is no longer in use or gets damaged, it becomes hazardous waste. And you all are proposing a 2,000-acre farm locally here that becomes hazardous waste after its useful life. I hope that you will think about the environment. A lot of people here say they support the environment and are for the environment. I think everybody here is. I grew up here the last 65 years. I love this place. I don't want to see the environment hurt. But I can tell you that I've been to large solar facilities. They hurt the environment. I've been to large wind. I'm the only one in the county probably that's ever erected wind. And I had a wind generator here locally even. They do hurt the environment in their own ways. So thank you for your time. Thanks again for coming. Please consider the poorest among us when you're making these decisions. It's very insensitive for board members that drive 3 and 4 electric cars to tell somebody to suck it up and pay the extra 7% when they're barely making ends meet, or get a big salary that nobody in this room can comprehend. Thank you.
Thank you, Brad. Who else? Way on the left? My left, sorry.
Dan Hunt, I live in District 3, and I'm in support of continuing disassociating from Tri-State. Also want to thank you because of the Sunnyside farm, in that I live in MSP Mobile Home Park, and 19 of our residents were able to sign up for that. And 50% of our residents are below 50% AMI. So some of those residents, once they pay for their rent and utilities, probably have, just a couple $100 left over. So thank you for doing that, and hope you do more in the future.
Thank you, Dan. Let's see, I'm gonna go back up onto the Zoom. Jesse, you have the floor.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Jesse Lassiter, I believe I'm District 2. And in a recent article, I just kind of more have a question, really. In a recent article in Durango Herald, it says that the buyout from Tri-State is going to cost La Plata Electric $210 million. Of that, $60 million will be up front and $150 over time. Where is La Plata Electric getting the funds to pay for this? And will that be passed on to its members? And what benefit does that have to the members to pay all this money and to turn around to leave Tri-State and then to turn around and buy 30% of its power back from Tri-State? That's all I have.
Thank you, Jesse, for being here and for bringing that up. Anybody else in the room? Yeah, I see your hand.
My name is Werner Heiber. I live in District 3. I've been coming to these meetings for just about 20 years. Not as much recently, but definitely during the transition period. And in my recognition, what I heard is Tri-State has not been a reliable partner. They literally blackmailed utilities, co-ops into signing the 50-year commitment 25 years ago. Kit Carson was the only one that didn't sign. So it's a great opportunity. And look how Kit Carson is doing. Their rates are low. They didn't sign, they also got out. Because we waited so long, because of opposition, now interest rates are higher. But let's learn from the past. It's important to know the past. Second, the southwest of Colorado is self-reliant. We are far away from any highway, from interstate, from metropolitan areas. And I trust that we should invest here and increase our reliability. This means if we separate from Tri-State, some of that money is going, instead of to $1 billion, $2 billion, $1 million salaries of the CEO. I don't know exactly what they make, but years ago it was already 1.5. All of that money stays in the local community. That has a multiplier factor. And if it comes to the reliability, I'd rather trust LPA staff, all of you back there, than somebody who sits in Denver who is responsible for 40 plus co-ops. Rate increases are inevitable because of material cost increase, because everything has gotten expensive. As a matter of fact, electricity costs have gone up less than any other as general cost of living increases. Solar reliability, solar recycling, there are now already recycling facilities available. When you look at the embodied energy in solar panels and the recycling, all of that can be done. It's much less expensive than, for example, redoing, breaking down power plants. So yes, I do support the separating from Tri-State. I trust your staff, and I trust the local community, and I really appreciate that that money is being kept local. And the last comment is, who wants to get into bed or stay in bed with this, bed? Have a neighbor, let's say, start a business, and they have $1 million, $10 million, $100 million debt. That's the case with Tri-State. It's $4 billion, and somebody has to pay for that. So thanks for your comments, and thanks for holding these meetings.
Thank you, Werner. Right in the front.
Yes, Daryl Shockley, District 4. I represent the workers. I had to take off work to be here because there was an opportunity for me to come and talk to you guys outside of work. And I appreciate what you're doing. Appreciate your holding this meeting so that we can have an opportunity to talk to you. There's $200 million that you guys are saying is going to cost to buy out from Tri-State. How much is it going to cost for the 2,000 acres of the land and also all of the solar panels? And what's actually used to make solar panels? How do you make solar panels? You use coal. You don't use solar energy to make this solar equipment that you guys are putting in. How long does it last? How long is it going to be before we have to replace it? What's the cost of the replacement? How do you get rid of 2,000 acres of solar panels safely? We are already connected to this, and a lot of these people, it costs too much money for electric now. And I'm not saying that you guys are the reason for that. It's cost too much for everything. But when you increase more and more, and there's costs that we're not hearing about, because I've not heard anybody talk about what it's going to cost for the land, the solar panels. I haven't heard that. And we didn't get a notice of any kind of increase, but I'm sure we'll get the increase on the bill. But a co-op, you guys have to represent all of us. And the thing is that they're talking about jobs that's going to be created here and stuff like that. That's wonderful, but what's the salary of these positions that he's talking about? See, I build houses here. You know who I build them for? I build them for people that can afford a $2 or $3 million home. I live in a trailer house. And I've been doing this for 40 years. I don't make the money that the people that I built for me. And the people, the job that you're talking about, you're creating, that's wonderful, but they're not going to be able to be here because they can't afford to stay here. If we, why don't we deregulate electricity in Colorado? Have you guys looked into that? Because it makes it competitive, and you guys are looking for competitive pricing for your people. So why don't we try to get something going to deregulate because then it's not a monopoly anymore. Because then the people get to choose what they pay and who they use. We did it in Colorado, in Texas, whenever I was there. And you know what? It brought the prices down because it made everybody competitive. If you don't have any competition, you can charge what you want. But the people that really get hurt by it are the ones that you guys need for this place to keep going. That's the small people, the little people. The people that make the small salaries are what keeps this area alive. So that the people with the large salaries can enjoy themselves. And I'm not saying anything about either side. I'm just saying it's just the way it works. We got to remember the little people so that we have a spot for the people that do spend more money in the area. Because if we're not here, they're not going to have anybody to do the work that they need done. And if the rates increase enough that we cannot stay here, then the people that are, you're going to have to bring people in, they're going to charge more money. Your salaries, the salaries of the people that are here, I'm sure don't reflect the salaries of some of you here. And a co-op should kind of understand what it means to have a small salary. Whenever you have to decide, like many of these people have said, they have to decide what they're going to pay. They have to juggle one bill and then try to pay the other bill, and then they have to pay late fees because obviously they're not getting the bills paid on time. And anything that you guys can do, thank you. Anything you guys can do to actually help everybody from the bottom up is going to be beneficial. And I appreciate your time and thank you for looking. Thank you for having this meeting. But I do ask also that there would be a way that we could have a town hall meeting or something where people can come.
15 seconds.
Because many people can't take off work. They can't come here to tell you what they think or how they feel. And it'd be really awesome if you guys could do that. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Daryl, for taking time to be here. Anybody else? Yeah.
Just for the record, there's about 10 more minutes in the public comment period.
All right. Looks like we're doing pretty good.
My name is Bill Hutchins. I'm in District 4, Forest Lakes. I'm concerned about several issues. One of them is transparency, which has been brought up. The other one is the cost of the buyout, which everybody brought up. I'm also concerned about conflicts of interest, which nobody was brought up. And I think that everybody probably in this room knows that solar cannot deliver base load energy. And I want to know what your plan is for providing base load energy unless you stay with Tri-State, which is currently what's going to provide the base load energy that we need. And the other thing I'm concerned about is the financial stability of the Plata Electric, because once you have to borrow the money to pay off a lot of this buyout, then you're going to need to borrow money to put facilities around the community. And you're going to have to borrow money to do that too. So I think that what you're going to do right now, you're spending 3% according to the 2023 annual report. You're spending 3% on long-term debt. And I think once this program gets in full operation, you're going to be looking at 20 to 30% long-term debt. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you, Bill. Anybody else in the room? One in the back. Barely see your hand.
Troy Horvath. I live out at Breed. I grew up there. I lived out there most of my life. The thing I want to bring up, relative to the analysis that was done that led to the decision to pursue the buyout with Tri-State, I really believe that it's incumbent on Plata Electric. I know that there's a lot of things in flux right now with the government funding and everything else. But given the amount of money that's involved in that buyout, I believe it's incumbent on Applied Electric to go back and do an analysis as close as possible to the point in time of that buyout to fully serve the fiduciary interests and fiduciary obligation to the membership. I don't know exactly what that's involved. Like I say, I appreciate the fact that there are a lot of variables, but if you do not do that, then the membership has virtually no basis for justification for all of the costs that they're going to shoulder that will go toward the buyout. Thank you.
Thanks, Roy. In front. Go ahead, Graham.
We also have one of the online persons already spoken.
Yeah, we'll do this one here and then we'll do Hope. And I think that'll probably get us to the end of our allotted hour.
My name is Terry Oliver, and I've been a member since 1990 when I was a teenager. I first moved here. I really appreciate the fact that you all are holding these live meetings again. I used to come to them and when I could. And I guess my biggest concern is, with this buyout, I have a lot of friends that are living paycheck to paycheck, working full-time, both parents, single parents. They have no idea these rate hikes are coming. And I told a few that I know, and they're scared to death. And so if you could please consider the working class. It's so hard to get by in this town. Did I mention I'm from District 2? Anyway, it's so hard to make it in this town. And I'm so worried about people that are working full-time jobs, taking care of the families, living paycheck to paycheck. And it scares the life out of me, this buyout. I'm worried about it. Yeah, I am. And so if you can just please consider the working class, be a little more transparent with everyone as we go forward. Just say thank you.
Thanks very much, Terry. Okay, one more. I see Lori's hand, but I believe you were sort of first in line. So Hope as our last member comment today. Go ahead, Hope.
Hello, good morning, everybody. Can you all hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes. Hi, my name is Hope Shuppelman. I live in Bayfield. I actually am in District 4, but I am actually out of town. I am actually going to be reading a letter from a young gentleman in District 4 to you guys. My name is Jonathan. In October, I lost my father to a heart attack at Purgatory this year. We were roommates and I am just 23 years old. I suddenly found myself in a completely alone. He was my only living family here in Colorado, and his passing not only has left me with grief, but I have been struggling to keep afloat financially. Since his passing, I've had to take on 3 jobs to stay afloat. I work as a ranch hand on the Winchester Ranch, which is our ranch, in addition to my weekend and night jobs. The rising cost in living has made it nearly impossible to keep above float, and the recent LPEA rates increase had only additionally added to my hardship. My electric bills, which has once been manageable, has now become significantly financially straining me. No matter how many hours I work, I feel like I am constantly trying to catch up. I never imagined I'd be in this position where I'd have to work around the clock just to keep the lights on. The financial burden has become overwhelming. These rate hikes has made it even harder for the working people like me to survive. Sincerely, Jonathan. I, again, just wanted you guys to hear this letter from a young man who does work on our ranch here, and to please keep them in your guys' decision making. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hope. All right, I think that's it for our public comment time period. Typically, well, we like to try and not let this be a dialogue, because then we can't get everyone's comments, and it's really hard to respond to every single person and their comments. But I do think since we had such a large group of people here today and we heard a lot of things several times, I wanted to allow a little bit of time for CEO Hansen and perhaps staff to address some of the recurring themes that we heard. The intent here is to only provide information that is sort of historical and factual. That none of this will be discussion about strategy and theory and who thinks one thing and who thinks another thing, but just to make sure that information that is already public information gets reiterated and addresses some of the questions and comments that came up. Chris, I had sort of in-person meetings that came up a lot. I had notification of rate changes, like how do we handle that from a timing standpoint, and how our members are allowed to and facilitated to communicate with the organization and with the board. If you have anything on top of that, knock yourself out.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. If you've got that one.
Yeah. No problem. All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And yeah, I appreciate the moment just to add a little bit of information. A huge thank you to everybody for being here this morning. I wanted to, just quickly fill in a few of the items that Ted just mentioned. Thank you for the comments about kind of the timing of meetings. And we are, this year, the board has scheduled 6 in-person board meetings and 6 remote meetings. So we kind of have a hybrid schedule for 2025. Those are scheduled to start at 9 a.m. On those days here in the main boardroom. I appreciate the comment about the community outreach events that we're doing. We've got the first town hall community conversation scheduled for March 25th. And then I've also added kind of a coffees with Chris concept that we're going to be partnering with the board members in each of the districts around the service territory. Those are typically scheduled to start at 8 a.m. Tried to put those early in the day so the folks could still make it to work on time, but I appreciate the feedback on the timing and happy to look at some alternatives as we schedule more of those in the future. The communication on the rate change, we sent that out to all members, both electronically and in paper format. And we've got very clear timelines that we have to meet from a compliance standpoint. So there's a 30-day comment period that's available for everyone. So I appreciate everyone's input on that. And we were already receiving lots of comments electronically. The final thing I'll mention, Mr. Chair, is just the references to the 2,000-acre solar farm. That is not a La Plata Electric project. That is being put forward by a private company. And so just want to make sure everyone's clear that that is not directly related to La Plata Electric. So thanks for the moment, Mr. Chair.
No, thanks for touching on those subjects. And I just want to touch on one more subject. I appreciate everyone being here. If you didn't get to say what you wanted to say today, if there's something else that you want to say, I want everyone to realize that this is not the only opportunity to do that. You are very welcome to reach out to the organization at info.lpea.coop. Or really to any of your board representatives. I mean, that's a lot of what we do. It's a lot of our responsibility is to hear what our constituents are saying and share that information amongst the board and amongst staff. So there are a lot of ways to communicate. I know many of you have, and please keep that up. Finally, before we close this out, Emily mentioned that it's great to stay and listen to this, but I also completely respect the fact that you've already carved out time to do this and appreciate that. So you're more than welcome to be here for as much of the meeting as is open session, but also we will not take any offense to any of you walking out at any time, because I know you have important things to do. So thanks very much for being here. Rachel, did you have a comment that we didn't?
Yeah, I just wanted to address, I heard a lot of and we've heard a lot of input on transparency and communication around information. And just want to let you all know that has been heard, and that is a very alive discussion. We're trying to figure out how do we get information to y'all, to the questions you have, while not compromising any of these complex legal situations we find ourselves in as we navigate. And so I don't know if we addressed it explicitly, but please know it is a very real and live conversation. We're trying to figure it out. Really appreciate everyone's really explicit questions of what you want to understand and hear. And we're trying to figure channels out. So keep it calm and we'll try to get it back. Thanks.
In-person meeting. All right, let's.
Heard that.
All right.
Thank you.
Let's move along with the agenda then. We are now on to consent board items. Let's see, I would entertain a motion to approve the consent board items. Thank you, Rachel. Move to approve. Second by Joe. Okay, any discussion or clarifications required on the consent board items? Fuller.
Yes, I have a question. I don't think I need to pull this.
Let's pursue it that way.
It's on the minutes, and I have it on page 6 of 164 of on board. It's page 3 of minutes. Under the attorney update, FERC actions, the second paragraph, the last 2 lines. That last sentence says the outcome of this change could affect Tri-State's members, including LPA, which will remain a transmission customer. And I asked about that in the fact meeting, and the answer I got contradicted what was said here. So my question is this actually a true statement, the way it's put in the minutes?
That the outcome of the case.
No, which will remain a transmission customer.
That is correct.
That is correct.
Yes.
And also I would just like to give you a heads up that I'd get more clarification when we talk about power supply progress executives.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
Great caller. Any other comments on or clarifications required? Dan?
I have a question on the bad debt write-offs. I've noticed there's a lot of customers that are delinquent and they have no capital credits. And I'm assuming those are probably college students that end the school year and they bail on their last bill. And we might need to look at maybe getting a higher first and last or something or other. Then I noticed one on here, a customer of $2,688, a write-off. They have no capital credits. How did that come to be that bill not so high and is being written off? So anyway, we probably need to look at maybe some policy changes or something there.
Okay, anything else on consent board items? Not, then all in favor of approving the consent board items as they stand, raise your hand and say aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving along. CEO and staff reports. What do you have for us?
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members wanted to have us pull up our monthly dashboard. We've got a few highlights that I wanted to make sure we cover, and of course, answer any questions that come up as we look at these different areas of our operations. As we always do, we start with the key performance indicators, and not too much to highlight here other than the one area where we don't have a green check mark. We're going to cover this a little bit more in the financial update from Mr. Berry, but this was a month where we had our NITS application for our transmission services, as well as our semi-annual and quarterly debt payments. So this is really by design. I don't think there's anything to worry about there, but we are below our target or goal cash reserves. And I'll let Patrick provide a little bit more information about that when we get to the financial update. On the next slide, we've got a few highlights from our operations. No lost time incidents in January, continuing our streak. Also wanted to highlight a very thorough analysis that we're in the middle of with some folks from the Department of Homeland Security that Elizabeth has been leading, and she'll have some more information for the board at our April executive session on kind of some of the action items that are coming out of that. But let me turn to Elizabeth to see if there's. Uh-oh. And she just stepped out. All right. Well, just to let everybody know, we've done a thorough analysis with a couple of staff members from Department of Homeland Security. We're going to have some very specific action items that we'll be bringing forward to the board in our executive session in April. So we're in the middle of that analysis right now, and some really great recommendations that have come back from that process. All right, let's go on. If there are no questions, to the next slide. A couple things to highlight here. First, on the mobile satellite internet solution, this is something where we've got, as we all know, dead zones of different types of coverage, both radio, cellular, across, as Chief Lee knows very well. And so we are looking at some mobile satellite solutions to kind of fill in those dead zones, make sure our crews can be well connected everywhere in the service territory. So we're testing that out this last month and this month. The other thing I wanted to mention, as many of you have seen as you drive north of town toward Purgatory, but the Animas Valley transmission rebuild, we're almost done with that, and had a few ups and downs along the way, but I'm pleased to report that that project should be wrapped up the first week of March, and have that upgrade and increased reliability as a result of that project. Yeah, Mr. Chair. Yeah, we'll take questions.
Yeah, just a comment, we had people in the audience say that we're not paying attention to maintenance and reliability. I just want to point out that every month we have reports that show how much our staff is doing to improve poles, to improve our infrastructure. And I think we need to continue to always say that. Thank you.
Yeah, so 3 major events, 2 due to switching errors and 1 due to failed underground equipment. So what are switching errors and how does underground equipment fail?
All right. I will turn to Dan or Jerry for more detail next year.
So the switching errors, when we installed the mobile sub, that was one of them. It was a setting that was 1, overlooked, and 2, it's a new sub, it's a new mobile. And it caused, what happened was 2 circuits actually were tied together, and it was just overlooked. The settings were overlooked. The other switching error was when doing some testing. Our testing in our substations has increased tenfold over the last probably 6 or 7 years to ensure proper operation. And with that increased maintenance and testing, we are going to see small mistakes, and that one was one of them. It was a major outage due to safety concerns and just steps involved when that kind of thing happens. And then the other underground issue, underground, you can't see the problems until you open the box. And this one, my guess is it was a burn up elbow inside of a junction box. And it was probably an installation error or installation. And it was installed when our Bayfield substation was relocated. And it was contractors, we all look over their shoulder 100% of the time. And it was probably an installation.
So not an aging issue on this. So the switching errors caught my eye because I was listening to a long article about SoCal Edison during the fires, the huge fires in Southern California, energized some of their lines. They were doing some circuit testing. They thought, it was those. So I'm so glad we're making these mistakes now when it's not going to kill somebody. And I know that and God help. I'm so helpful. I'm so grateful. Sorry that we make mistakes because we have a chance to learn from it.
Yeah.
So
after every time that something like that happens, we actually create a SOP because this is both these instances were first timers, and And so after that, we create an SOP, so it never happens again. So
Great.
that's the process.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks for those questions. I really, and Director Lewandowski, your comments on sort of the ongoing excellence that we're trying to deliver. And it's large, complex system, 40,000 poles, lots of substations, and every day trying to get sharper and learn and make sure we have high reliability. So I appreciate this section every month to highlight that work. If there are another question, Director Wheeler?
Yeah, the Animas Valley rebuild, what fiber optic, infrastructure is being put onto that, and who can use it?
Yeah. Dan, would you go on? Sure. Take that one?
Yeah, the existing line, before we rebuilt it, had a 144 count fiber on it, ADSS. That was moved over to the new structures. That's still there. While we put the fiber optic ground or the optical ground wire up at the very top, it also has an additional 48. So there's plenty of room there. Only 2 out of the 180 some odd fibers are being used.
And the accessibility of those for one of them's are they both in the power space, or are they?
Yeah, anything, we would have to own that since they are there, but we can lease it out. That does not have necessarily have commercial right away all the way through, and that would have to be established on that. But we do have a lease rate available for anybody who wants to use the dark fiber from point A to point B.
And where do you think our ISPs and so forth of the potential to utilize it? I mean, from my time at Fast Track Board, where we had lots of people who live out in that area complain constantly about lack of internet access or high-speed internet access. I would think there would be a lot of interest. So we've got facility, we've got infrastructure.
The ISPs in Region 9, Region 10 are all aware that that's available now.
Any other questions on this slide? All right, let's move to the next one. A few things to highlight here. The first bullet is a really important one. It came up a little bit in the public comment section. I've been using the term new administration risk, which I think is kind of the most neutral way to describe where we're at. There's a huge amount of lobbying going on right now around a lot of the frozen funds and programs. Of course, one of these relates to a small grant that we are part of, which is the PACE program. So we do have a little bit of risk, but it's relatively small for us. I would say immaterial to our overall capital planning. That is not the case for Tri-State. And I can share some more details and specific as we get into executive session, but there's, as you're very well aware, the large amount of federal loans that are part of the USDA programs that are currently frozen. And we, as we move forward post-exit, would not have to worry about that risk. So really fascinating dynamic that we're in the middle of right now, and just want to make sure folks were aware of that with this particular part of the narrative. The other thing I wanted to mention is on the second bullet point there, we did complete the settlement agreement with Tri-State. That includes 2 very important PPAs, including buying power from the Dolores Solar Project as it comes online, as well as a firming PPA. It represents about 30% of our resource mix. So provides a great commercial relationship. I think a win-win for both sides as we finish that settlement agreement. Final thing to mention on this slide, which relates to another selfie you were stuck with my mug on it. But I had a chance to meet Greg a few days before he started with us, but a tremendous new addition to the LPEA team. Greg was formerly the head of power supply for United. So he has just been through what we are working on right now. And as Dan can attest, added immediate value to these discussions and work that we're looking at as we bring to the board various PPA options and power supply options over the course of the next 12 to 18 months. So great to have Greg on board, and I had a chance to meet up with him before he started, and Amanda made me take a selfie. So
Amanda, you need to give him lessons on this.
wow. That's
Yeah, I mean, Greg's a huge win for the team. Yeah, it's a nice catch. I understand that there are pieces of the puzzle that you can't talk about in public session. But I think it would be helpful in light of the public comments today, if you could go a little deeper in areas that you are allowed to talk about, that when thinking about the potential existential risk that Tri-State bears as it relates to the pending grown loans and grants that are public. And if you could maybe talk about that and what that risk looks like to Tri-State, that would be helpful, I think.
Yeah, I can share a few more details in public session, and happy to dig in deeper with some of the non-public details during executive session. Tri-State, as was publicly announced, was granted a $2.5 billion package, the vast majority of which is loans. And that is available to them through the USDA program, which is currently frozen. So as you can imagine, Tri-State and its affiliates are working hard to unfreeze those federal commitments that were made in the last administration. There's been no movement on that at this point. And so it's kind of where I came up with the phrase, the new administration risk, because these programs across the government, IRA, IIJA, et cetera, the sub piece that is in USDA, all completely frozen at this point and represent a huge amount of risk, for that particular situation. So, happy to give more details, but that's the general situation.
But just to sort of poke on that point a little bit, my understanding, correct me if I have the facts wrong, was that it was actually a conditional commitment. It's not a grant. Grant had not been authorized. It was a conditional commitment pending a completion of a set of tasks that have yet to be completed. So it's more than just waiting for the check to be cut. Is that correct?
Well, absolutely. And to be clear, it's not a check to be cut. It is a loan facility for the vast majority of that commitment. And you're absolutely right. There are various steps and milestones that have to be met before that loan facility is even available. And so there's a number of operational and policy risks that are very clear in the public domain.
And again, just to go a little bit deeper and cut me off from getting too far into the weeds. In the absence of that loan package, they will have to seek that loan, those amounts through commercial sources, banks and whatnot. And if they are unable to secure that scale, it is likely that they will, in the foreseeable future, become insolvent or need to seek bankruptcy protection, of which ultimately, as a co-op of co-ops, those remaining co-ops will have to bear those costs, either in the form of a workout or an earnout or an emergence of a reorganization and bankruptcy. But eventually those costs will come back to the remaining co-ops should they go down into that bankruptcy path. Is that correct or is that incorrect?
So Director Burchell, I would say you are describing very real risks. I won't comment directly on their balance sheet or their financial situation. I'll let Tri-State do that directly. But I would say you are describing very real risks, and it's part of what I'd say has escalated because of the new administration and the immediate changes they made as they came into office.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Kohler.
So that's a good thing to talk about Tri-State, but we're going to be out of Tri-State. So what is the impact on people we are looking for our power source? Because I imagine these subsidies and stuff are a big part of their approach to give us a price. So I'd like to, or you can talk in public.
Yes.
But what is the impact to us through our new power source?
Yeah, great question. And Director McGinnis, I will provide additional details in the executive session along with staff. What I can say that's I think immediately responsive is, the termination payment. So I really don't like the term buyout because it's not a buyout. We are contractually obligated to cover our existing obligations. That's what the CTP is about. LPA, along with our peers, is responsible for the existing assets that were committed decades ago in many cases. And we have to pay off the remaining liability for that. Many of those are stranded assets like the coal generating facilities, Craig and other places. That is what's going to be calculated for us in our CTP payment. Now that's existing liability. So we are going to go from, and I made this comment to the Durango Herald yesterday, who you saw this morning's paper, that we are essentially refinancing those liabilities. Right now we're paying them, but monthly. Now we're going to be looking at a debt instrument that would allow us to pay off those liabilities to Tri-State in one lump sum, and then we start monthly payments on that debt instrument. So there's not a material change to our debt situation, our liability situation. If you think about our balance sheet, it's basically swapping one liability for another liability. So I think it's really important for us to be able to communicate that clearly with our customers and our members. And that was what I tried to do with the Durango Herald in the interview.
And that's good, but the part I'm after is actually our new power source. Because I think like Tri-State, they're gonna need federal funds to build the facilities that they want to build. And those subsidies were a key part of their business. And it looks like a lot of them are gonna get cut. So
yeah,
what can you say in public as far as what we're looking at there? Because I think that's a risk for us.
Yeah,
I don't think Tri-State is. That's a risk for those others.
Yeah, well, that's right. Yeah, as we finish our membership and move to just a contractual PPA, which is what I mentioned on the slide here, I think that's exactly right. We are de-risking that as a result of that change. We don't carry those risks going forward that we've just described for Tri-State, because their plan absolutely is based on this federal program. And if that doesn't happen, that will mean their path forward is will have to change significantly. Again, I'm not going to speculate on what their plan B or plan C is. That is for them to decide. I'm focused on our plan A, which is how do we make sure we have reliable power supply agreements in place for both the near and the longer term.
But how does, let me try and,
yeah,
what's the terminology used for the administrative risk, something you made up a term?
Yeah.
How does that impact our perceived plan A?
It is. Okay.
Yeah, our future power source.
Right. So I see very little risk for our future power supply agreements. The two PPAs that we just signed with Tri-State, depending on what their future looks like, I think are sustainable. There's always some commercial risk that your partner, in this case, our commercial contractual agreement, if there was some kind of major change to their business model or financial situation, would that put risk on those PPAs? It may, but history would demonstrate that those are likely to be sustainable. So there is some risk there, but now this is 30% of our overall situation. So we've shrunk that. Yeah, we've hedged. It's a good time to use the word hedge. And we would likely have time to seek replacements if there was a huge change, or if the counterparty, in this case Tri-State, was unable to fulfill those agreements. So I think there is still some risk there. I don't want to describe it as zero because it's not zero, but it's significantly less than the status quo.
So again, I'm not quite getting.
Yeah. What about the new power we haven't signed yet?
The 70%.
So what about the rest of it?
We don't have PPAs right now. We're working on those. And I would think they'd be tremendously affected by what the administration is doing as far as cutting subsidies. First, we're going to. That's what I'm asking. What is our risk that we don't have signed up?
All right. I will make a quick opening statement, then I'll turn to Dan for more detail. All right. Yeah, sorry. I thank you, caller, for helping me make sure I get to the root of your question. Absolutely, there is new administration risk on the entire power sector right now. I mean, they cut jobs at WAPA and BPA, and it was immediately rescinded in some cases. So there's a lot of moving parts across current operations. And as we look at future projects that we might want to contract with in the 2030s, they're going to be affected by policy choices that are being made right now. That said, we are planning to bring back to the board an approach that would create an all-source RFP. So we would go out to the market and gauge what our options look like in the longer term, kind of post-transition period, so late 2029 into the 2030s. But let me turn to Dan for some additional detail.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. So yeah, a lot of the projects that we're looking at, some are going to be aided by potential grants, IRA packages and whatnot. I'll say we're on, I think we could all agree we're going to be on equal footing as other people in the industry as well. And so if we're seeing these pains, so is everybody else. So it's not really, is that a good decision, bad decision? It's something that's out there that we're all having to work through and address those risks. So what we're seeing is contracts that are coming through and PPA proposals will segment out some of these benefits and say, hey, this is the price if we can maintain this grant, this IRA package that we're anticipating maintaining. Otherwise, this might be the pricing you're looking at, and we'll have this range to work with. So whenever we evaluate these, we're taking a sharp look at, did they already safe harbor some things, which increases the odds of being able to get the credits they want and de-risking some of that for us. So we're looking for projects that have been safe harbored and also just considering a lot of these are dealing more with the IRA package, which although it takes an act of Congress to change, it's certainly being muddled right now. And so we're waiting for the dust to settle on some of them.
And just make sure, is everybody familiar with safe harbor as a concept? Is that familiar for the board?
It's near gig harbor.
Yeah, Bar harbor, safe harbor. So this is one of these areas that will likely end up in the courts of whether or not the existing contracts that have been made are enforceable. I have no doubt there will be a tremendous amount of litigation on this area. But to Dan's very good point, right? We're on equal footing with everybody else in the market. So hopefully, Kohler, that's responsive. I think there is definitely risk there. We are looking at ways to reduce that risk. We think the safe harbor projects are a great way to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I will say that at the CREA annual meeting, that was probably the #1 topic that was talked about throughout all the different sessions.
Yes.
And they have a big demand coming in with AI data centers. And I think it's important. We're asked about, okay, what's going to happen when we get out of tri-state?
Yeah, and I think the good news is compared to our peers, the other CREA members, our risk at this point is significantly lower. Many of our peers are facing 8, 9 figure types of exposure. And our exposure is, in much, much lower, low 7 figures, maximum exposure to this current policy uncertainty.
Thank you.
A question, I guess, for Dan. What we're talking about though is with our PPAs, we're talking about that's 2 years or 3 years down the line. What we're doing with Mercuria, they're not affected by it, right? We're solid until we're out completely, correct?
I think that's a good assessment. We've secured, I'll say, the first 2 years, that bridge period. And now we're working on optimizing the future.
Right.
And so going out, finding the best resources for what that might look like.
Lots going to happen in 2 years, I think. And then just one other comment on the completion of the settlement with Tri-State. I know we can't say a lot about that, but I just want to say in public session that settlement also will result in tens of millions of dollars of a savings for us over the long term of our how'd you say it? Termination payment.
Yeah, CTP, that's right, yeah. And we did share a lot of those details with the membership. Everybody in the room received that email. So we put out as much information as we possibly could. Onward? Yes. All right, let's go on to the next slide. Appreciate that conversation. On this particular slide, we're really trying to just show kind of the steady week by week outreach that we're doing as staff and on behalf of LPEA. So a few of the highlights there that you can see. And I think we're really trying to make sure we are involved in the right places in the community. Of course, always love to hear from the board if there are things that you think we need to get more involved in, or if there are opportunities that you think we're missing. And we also, as the board got to see the focus group output came out. You can see the second to last bullet there. And then I was really pleased to get over to Archuleta County and spend time not only with the county commission, but also with the Pagosa Springs Town Council and the city and the county managers to discuss various projects that we have going on there. And we've got approval of a new substation, the Trujillo substation, that's in front of the town council that should be in front of them here in the next couple of weeks. So almost there. Okay, let's go on to the next slide on the financial health, and I'll be asking for Patrick's support here. I wanted to provide a little bit more details on the cash reserve situation. So over to Patrick.
Morning, everyone. Patrick Berry, Vice President of Finance for La Plata Electric Association. It's great to see everyone here. January was a good start for 2025. We made a lot of concerted efforts to refine some of our budget processes, and we saw that in January. So I was cautiously optimistic going in, but pleased to see the results. We came in at just about 8.5% operating margins for January. We budgeted 7.7%, and that's a little bit better than budget driven, pretty much evenly split between better than expected revenue performance and a little bit better than expected operating expenses. Operating expenses are the more controllable piece of the equation. So if I look at that, we are at budget variance about 1% below budget, which I was really pleased with. The cash position is the highlight topic of the slide. This is by design. We've delayed our rate increase until April, so we are absorbing some inflationary pressures that we have seen on both the operational side and the capital side. And so this number is not alarming to me. We have plenty of liquidity. We have a $25 million line of credit we've not drawn from. We are working off cash right now. And so this number was by design. We also had our quarterly and semi-annual debt payment. We had some application fees that were unexpected. And CapEx has seen inflationary pressures. The capital spend, meaning the money that we put into our facility and plant from a maintenance standpoint, we've been pacing somewhere around a rolling 12-month period of about $20 million. So that's continued. January was dry, which allows for a little bit better execution on those projects. So it was a heavy capital spend month as well.
All right. Any questions? Yeah, Director.
What time are you thinking about for that to get back into where it should be?
We'll look at April. Capital spending will affect that. Cash is notoriously hard to forecast when it comes to capital execution. There's many variables that can impact the timing of those projects. But I would look to April when you see rate increases to start to alleviate some of that pressure. And it's possible we leverage line of credit as we move through capital projects as well. And that would obviously pull from the line of credit and add to our cash position, which would bring that in line, but we avoid that because we don't want the interest costs unless we absolutely have to do that, right? So it's a fine balance of managing interest costs and also having liquidity on hand, which is why I continuously look at our line of credit, availability, and also cash.
Thank you.
Yeah, we're also looking at the FAC, that KPI, because it's not fully describing our position. And that's around that April timeframe. Maybe we'll come back to the board with a different KPI or set to describe our cash position and where's the alarm bell and where's the safety green space for that. So, yeah.
Yeah, this is a really important point because we're about ready to enter into a process with Fitch to be rated. And part of that is to look at refreshing our KPIs around how the market is evaluating our creditworthiness. And so this is a conversation that we'll be bringing to the board via FAC over the next few months. All right, any final questions on this slide?
Well, I don't know if this is the time. I have a question on the actual board of directors, actually the budget expenditures. Is this the time to ask that or?
Yeah, I think it's fine.
It's at your purview.
It may be a
Yeah,
deep
whether
dive.
and whether I can answer this question is the real.
Let's get it out there.
This is on page 145 of 164. And it has, a special thing for special events of $1,400 for January. I was wondering what special events happened in January for the board.
We all
As an
hung
actual,
out.
as an
What's
actual.
We all hung out.
Party.
At the library.
That was our Bayfield.
That's what it was. Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
I'm glad y'all were able to answer that.
Good job, Rachel.
And for the public, that was an integration session between the board and our new CEO, so we could work together well.
Thank you. Good clarification. Yeah.
All
right.
Trusting me, no.
All right, we got just one more slide that I want to cover, and this is sort of our look ahead, a few things to highlight here. We did have the questions about how we are best utilizing our assets to help broadband access in our region. I did want to mention that all the poll attachment figures are in the appendix. You can kind of look at our steady monthly progress there. That's in the appendix on this file. Just wanted to point that out, and that's where those will be available to the board and the public each month. And then the other thing I want to mention was the launch of our Resolve to Electrify program. And that includes things like battery storage systems. We have a rebate program there, electric vehicle rebates and home electrification incentives. And Dan, I don't know if there's any particular detail you want to add to that one?
Join us for our EE session. That's tomorrow.
1 to 4.
1 to 4. Check out our new lobby and our BE display there.
Yeah, great. Director.
I was able to spend about an hour and a half at the Resolve to Electrify in Pagosa. And I want to extend my gratitude to Stephen Smith and John Kenny and Kevin, who is covering Emily Mistledang right now. They did an excellent job. We didn't have a whole lot of public come in. There was, some people that came in and talked to them. I was curious how that format would work. But the conversations were great. So I was able to listen in and good job on the conversations and the information being distributed.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback. And we'll continue to do outreach throughout the year, making sure folks are aware of these programs. And, we track one of our KPIs is beneficial electrification sales. The board will continue to get that visibility. All right, another question?
So I heard you're thanking them about the Resolve to Electrify. I've had a lot of help from Steve. I am privileged enough to be able to install a solar and battery system at my house, and it just happened, and I did not know there was a power outage until I got to work. So that's pretty amazing, and I'm thrilled, happy. I had no internet, but that's okay. So double down, thank you to Steve, thank you to the whole group. It was seamless. It was really great, and I certainly appreciate that work. Broadband goal, the Archuleta County Broadband Office had a meeting of, I don't know, players, who they thought, cared, and they thought I cared, which I do. They were talking, they are always so grateful, and it is embarrassing how much they thank me for the work that LPA has done to help them. Because I'm like, no, guys, it's LPA. But it really has. It's meeting LPA's operational needs in a flexible enough way that other folks can take advantage of it. And the broadband office is agnostic. They do not get involved in ISPs or anything like that. They're trying to keep it as open as possible. And they just fall over themselves in gratitude for that. So, and I have a name you might want to, I don't have it in my head because it's a name and I don't keep those in my head. So I have a name for you to talk to over there because I think it's pretty exciting and it's so great to hear gratitude.
Yeah, sounds great. And I'm hearing loud and clear from the board that we want to continue to support those efforts in our service territory. We've got some amazing assets, as we discussed, some available fiber and poles in some very tough geography. And we want to max those assets out to help our community. So, Director Wheeler.
Yeah, we actually have a strategic goal that was adopted by the board for that. So it's not just on an apple pie here. It's adopted, and you'll always hear from me about it.
Yes, for sure. All right, thank you all. Mr. Chair, thanks for this moment to highlight some of the good work over the last month. And there are no other questions. Back to you.
Yeah, great to hear. Good report. Thanks, Chris. Kirsten,
One more?
Is the North Star part of your report? I mean, you've got that whole North Star after, immediately after.
Operations, yes.
Okay, I have a question about the North Star.
Please, yeah.
Following 6 priority areas will help prioritize the focus of our work from 2021 to 2025.
So
It's 2025.
make sure I'm looking at the same thing you are.
So I think we've had some strategy light maybe discussions, but we as a board haven't had strategy discussions to get you past 2025. We realize that, right? And we're gonna do, and what's our timing on full-blown strategy? And I'm actually looking to you both because we totally rely on staff to help us with that, to say, this is where we think, you know, we should go and can go and need to go. And then we also need to, as a board, bring the membership, the
Voice to that.
voice to it, and this is where the members want to go. So what's our timing? And I didn't mean to.
No, you are springing it on me, but
Okay,
that's
sorry.
fair. No, it's totally fair. You know, I think I'll just do a little lateral and say, what does staff see as mandatory here, right? When are we, how far off the back are we? When are we really off the back? What, you know, we did strategy light, right? We did it, I'm as bad with dates as you are with names.
Yeah.
Thank you, teamwork. And that was, we need this, right? This is a mandatory strategy session because staff is in a position that they need this guidance. Please feel free to make those requests as they come up, right? That keeps us at a bare minimum up with what we need to be doing. But at a maximum, and I think you're very much right, and I'm sure there's more feelings along those lines, that we need to do the deep dive. And that's, and it's, you know, it's high on my mind and high on my list, but I know that doesn't give you a date or a time frame. I think it's, you know, I think it's ASAP, and just has to slot in amongst, you know, other critical things. But honestly, I think we have some runway coming up. I think we have, you know, I mean, I say that as soon as you say that, the runway gets full. But I do think we have some board runway coming up where we're not, you know, doing cow on rate design. We're not doing special session on power supply, and that would be the time to do this. Whenever, you know, I think I appreciate you bringing it up. I take that as, at least from one board member, board commitment to jumping on this as soon as we can make time to do it.
I'm available.
So strategy, gotcha.
Thank you.
Let's see, okay, then I think moving on, to board action agenda. Let's start off with Finance and Audit Committee, Tim.
Just 1 second.
If you want, or we.
One second. Just all right, there. Thank you. So obviously there's a report in your packet. With one slight typo error in it. I won't point it out. You can all go look for it. And it's immaterial. We went through the agenda. There wasn't a great deal of discussion on most of the items on the agenda. And we spent most of the balance of the time in the cost of study methodology review and executive session, looking at the rate changes. One item that we did make a recommendation to the board is to approve resolution 2025-03, which is in the board packet at this meeting, and it's the authorization to use CoBank for future financing. This is a resolution that the bank, CoBank, provided to us. So it doesn't look like our typical ones that we draw up ourselves. And it was clarified this authorization would not affect our status or terms as a current CFC borrower, as it would initially be for unsecured debt only. It would open up about $1 million line of credit available to us. It's really preparing ourselves, and Patrick, you can correct me at any point, but it's really about preparing ourselves for accessing other credit should we need it as we go through transition into a new era without relying on tri-state. So if there are any questions about the report, happy to take them. Sure, Dan, go ahead.
What's the closing date on fast track? What's an update on that?
We have,
So you're asking about
Fast track, the selling of fast track, what's the closing?
well, we've already closed that transaction. That was closed a while back. What we are doing now is in the executive session update, we hear from the finance
Okay, that's
VP.
coming. Okay,
Well, there wasn't really, it's an executive session discussion, and it's really about status of payments associated with the closing of that transaction. There were holdback payments. And if we want to go into that, there wasn't a lot to report, put it that way, but we can bring that up again in executive session if you want.
yeah, if when we go into executive session, you want to hear about that, just add that to the list of topics we'll be
Yeah,
discussing.
we'll need to include that in the executive session motion.
I will just say there was very little to report.
okay.
Nothing really has changed. So, did you have a question?
Yeah, sure do. You've got the risk policy update on your report, and you had the risk policy update on the policy committee's report. Can, on either this section or the next session, can you, Patrick, talk about just high level where we are, where about, kind of what you said to both of those boards, which was, you might want to wait
Committees.
until, I'm giving you a few minutes because it's in the next section.
Talking about committees, not boards.
I'm sorry?
Committees,
Right.
She's on committees, yeah.
not boards.
Yeah.
I will just say that there was very little update. It was a very brief update on the risk policy. Yes, it's in process. That was really about the extent of what the FADC
Okay.
in terms of an update.
Okay, then I'd like to take the opportunity, because we talked about the details in executive session, but overall, we need to have a risk policy program, a robust risk policy program in order to join the SVP. We're in the process of figuring out how we want to do that, how we want that committee made up. Are there gonna be LPA board members on it? Are there not? Is it gonna be all staff? What that's going to be? I'm not sure the timing on that, and I'm not sure the timing is super critical, but have I got right where that's what we're trying to figure out right now. We want to stand up the right kind of committee with the right kind of processes and policies. And I think that can be open.
Yeah.
Okay, cool, because it's open now if it wasn't.
That's correct.
We're scheduling training at this point to build some foundational knowledge to help people make more informed decisions on what the actual structure of the committee might look like, rather than just going in blind, like, I think it should be this, or I think it should be that. So training is being scheduled right now.
Great, thank you, Patrick.
Well, I think I've seen that schedule somewhere that might be provided to you, because it had the timeline on it, exactly how this is going to go forward. I don't know if that was in fact or where I saw that. But
we did briefly talk about it. We have, I think, there's some fluidity about it as we work through the actual schedule, meaning dates could change. But yes, we're starting to put together that training, that Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4 timeline. That's correct.
Maybe that'd be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks, Cole.
Yeah.
Yes, there was a timeline provided to us by Patrick, and I believe it's in fact, I was just trying to look for it. But
Great, thank you.
I don't see it here. We can share that again.
I put it in my committee on policy report.
Okay.
The timeline.
There you go. Maybe that's it. Any other questions on FAC?
We need to go
Report?
to the resolution, right? Yeah.
Okay, we'll make sure people have questions.
Sorry.
Answered. And so, FAC voted unanimously to recommend the board approve resolution 2025-03. So that's a motion out of committee.
It doesn't need a second because it is brought forward as a committee recommendation. So they can proceed to comment if people have discussion
Debate.
Just a question, so, how does this relate to our long-term financing, 2 years from now with CFC? We stay with CFC, do we have to renew this? I'm just kind of wondering about kind of the machinations, I guess, of.
So when you think about, we're basically buying money anytime you take a debt issuance, you're buying money, right? So to adhere to our fiduciary obligation, we want to do our due diligence and explore different rates. And this is a mechanism to allow us to establish credit terms ahead of time. So they might be able to participate in a conversation. We've not committed to one path or another as far as termination and financing would be concerned, but this gets us to a point where they could be more active participants to offer rates or participation in the actual issuance of that debt.
And I mean, we've talked to them about it too. I mean, they said, unless it's another entity, they've said that they would be on board to finance us.
Not in those terms. I don't want to put words in CoBank's mouth, but they are interested in speaking to us in some shape.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and if I may just quickly add to that. So Joe, this resolution that we're looking at right now is on an unsecured line of credit, standalone. So it's not directly related to the larger conversation we're having about how do we competitively bid out the debt instrument that we need for the CTP. But to Patrick's spot on point, how do you get the best rate? You compare everything available in the market. And so this is, it does relate to that competitiveness that we're trying to create here.
And I have had conversations with private lenders, meaning non-co-op based. They just don't seem to be able to compete. The nonprofit side of the equation and then the familiarity with our line of business has been a great advantage for these, for both the banking and CMC.
Did you have something, Rachel?
No, I think I figured it out in my head.
Okay.
So motion's on the floor.
Second.
No,
No.
Oh, yeah.
it's already.
Right.
So there was discussion.
Dan, you have a question?
Looks to me like this document, this resolution is just affirming who can sign the loan documents, basically. So that's all it is.
Yep.
No timeframes, no nothing.
It's authorization.
That's right.
It's board authorization. The bank wants us to vote on something. So they give us things to vote on.
Call the question.
All right.
All right, so all in favor of this?
Aye.
Raise your hand, say aye.
Aye.
Let's get him. Back to you.
All right, yeah, thank you, Tim. Thanks, board. On to committee on policies. Nicole?
Sure. So the report is in the packet. Basically, we finished up policy 105. We got a couple amendments to that in the last couple of days that I think we can discuss here in an open session.
Yep.
And then we did get the update on the energy risk management. Basically, since you asked specifically about this, the idea was workshops, board engagement this quarter, policy drafting, third quarter, workshops, fourth quarter, and then final policy approval this time next year.
Great, thank you.
And then I did a review of all of our policies, and a lot of them are non-compliant with our policy of reviewing every 3 years. So we looked at a system to get through some of those more quickly, which would be a little more homework on the front end for Committee on Policy members, but basically for some of these things that don't need changes, we can put some eyes on it and have them in the consent agenda. And then through that process, if we decide actually they do in fact need changes, we'll bring it out of the consent agenda and have it become the policy the following month. So we're gonna go ahead and try that out, try to get through some of those that haven't been looked at in quite a few years. And then in that, following, I guess, the first time we're gonna try that, we're gonna do policy 101, which we think is not gonna need changes. So we have that in consent agenda. Obviously, this requires all of us to go through it. And then if we decide it does, then the following month we'll look at it. And then policy 102, functions of the board of directors, we have a feeling we'll need some time spent on it. And that will be the policy that we decide to revise this coming month. So any questions on that report? Okay, and then if not, maybe I'll pass it over to Graham.
Yeah, so the committee unanimously approved recommended changes to policy 105 that have been circulated. And then we got some subsequent comments and suggestions. I think the suggestions from the non-committee members were good and relatively straightforward. They've been incorporated into the document you're looking at. The only last minute comment that wasn't incorporated in the document you are looking at is a suggestion under Roman numeral 4 ballot procedures. Earlier in Roman numeral 2, we mentioned an opportunity for members who are paperless to opt out of receiving a paper ballot. If you look at Roman numeral 4, you'll see it says, for each election, a mail ballot and return envelope containing a signature line by the voting member shall be mailed to each member. We've added another clause that says, unless that member has elected to opt out of receiving a paper ballot. So that's the only change that's not reflected in this document that you have that we would suggest to make. So at this point, it's as a referral from committee, the recommendation to approve the changes to policy 105, including the clause that I just mentioned, would now be pending and open for discussion. Rachel.
I just had one question, if it was on it's on letter C letter C, election and voting requirements. I wasn't sure if this was just an accidental omission or if it's by design. Final sentence of that paragraph, if a member joins cooperative after the date the mail ballots are mailed, that member may only vote in person at the meeting.
And then
So
they should have an electronic option as well. I think that's a great point. I think, do we have, and by consensus, can we add a reference to electronic balloting in that line as well? Is there any objection to adding a reference to members who join after the date the ballots are mailed, receiving an electronic ballot? Sure, yeah.
So why would there be a difference between paper and electronic? Is that just a timing?
Yeah, so we can generate, once they have a Smart Hub account, so I think hopefully, I know Amanda's gotten a lot of information out to the technical questions that a lot of directors had about how we're going to facilitate electronic voting, but it will be going through the Smart Hub application. And so if a member has access to Smart Hub, they will be able to have an electronic ballot. So we should be able to, we'll double check that. We should be able to facilitate that once they become a member and have Smart
At the end.
Only.
Because it would go with their check-in, when they're checked into the annual meeting, and when we double check if they're eligible to vote.
I'm glad I asked Amanda. So evidently they will not, if you become a member after the publication date, you would need to vote in person.
Which is what it currently says.
Which is what it currently says, yeah.
Okay.
So
no change.
Okay, so no change. Thank you very much.
Keep going, Rachel.
And then just one other question. I saw this on the red lines and didn't see it necessarily incorporated into the policy. It was more answered in the comments. But it was, someone had made a great question about two-step verification or something. How are we ensuring that the votes coming in, if it's going through Smart Hub, are legit? We just got botted at my organization, and it's been a disaster. So now I'm quite sensitive to it, and I know we have an amazing cybersecurity team. So I just want to make sure we have that not only in practice, but in policy. There's something protecting and ensuring that we're doing our due diligence, especially if it's kind of a interface between our tech world and their tech world.
So, so I can tell you for the policy level, we have just mirrored the statute, which calls for a secure electronic method, right? And so I think we're gonna leave it relatively general like that and let our third-party facilitator, who will be hosting the election for us, be in charge of those security measures. But I think Amanda can speak to the specific security measures for this election.
That's it, as long as it's covered and.
And Drew can chime in here, but right now we've added, Drew Steve has added multi-factor authentication as an option for our members to access Smart Hub. And so we do have the ability to make that required.
I'll let you, that's your area of expertise. So if you got it, you got it. Just make sure someone's got it.
Any other comments on 105? You ready to vote?
Maybe just one more clarification on, so now we are voting on, exactly the red line.
Yes, exactly. With the one change that I mentioned, which was to sort of add the additional part about, opting out of electronic ballot. It's sort of a belt and suspenders, right? You know, just to sort of make sure we're abundantly clear that people can opt out of a paper ballot if they only want to have.
That helps me.
I think we're ready to vote then.
Okay, yeah, I'll take it. All in favor of Committee on Policy's recommendation to approve policy 105? Raise your hand and say aye. Aye.
It appears unanimous.
Yeah. Anything else, Nicole? Okay, on to 5C, NRECA annual meeting. We need to appoint a delegate and alternate, that's our intent here, is to appoint a delegate and alternate to go to the NRECA annual meeting in March. Is that when that is? In March or April?
Early March.
Yeah.
Early March.
Early March.
I will open it up for nominations for either or both delegate and alternate. Tim.
So, at the last meeting, we had a motion that we tabled, which was to not send anyone. So maybe we should revisit. Is that what we want to do before we actually nominate someone?
That seems fair to me.
One of the things was, will our resolution be there? And would we have a reason to go there on that basis?
I think that sounds good. I think someone should formulate that in the form of a motion.
I would bring back the motion, but we do not send.
Yeah, I think that's right. We had sort of tabled that motion. So the standing motion would be to resume the motion on the decision of whether to send anybody at all.
All right.
From last month.
I'll resurrect that motion however you tell me I'm supposed to do.
I think we can call that up at this.
Resurrected and seconded, so then debate is on attend or not attend.
But they've got pizza in the grocery store now.
So we'll get an answer on attend, not attend before we move into who.
So that's a motion to open that discussion.
Yeah,
we're having
so
a discussion.
we're taking it back off the table, right, from last month's, and so now we're resuming the motion.
To try and utilize terminology that I'm learning about. We're debating this motion.
I have something to add to the debate. May I? Okay. So one of the questions last month is the geothermal resolution going to be there? It is. It is not going to be part of the consent agenda. It's going to be broken out as its own thing. So we do want somebody to speak to it. They did change the wording, made it actually more broad, which is good, but we still want to take the message of yeah, we like this really broad stuff, but remember the idea behind this was synergy between gas, oil and geothermal, workforce and equipment. So, that was a question is it going to be there? Yes, it is going to be there. It's going to need defending because anytime you have something that's not on the consent agenda, somebody's going to not like it. And so I think we should send somebody to defend that. There's also a DEI resolution that may have already been tabled. They're going to talk about it in June 2025.
It's in the consent agenda this time around, but it is going to be up in June for discussion.
Okay,
And what does that say?
so somebody's going to maybe pull it out of the consent agenda and then it needs to be defended. So I think there's two, those would be the keys specifically for this one to go to. Additionally, it is a learning opportunity. I know it costs money and we play with millions and millions and millions of dollars. And I would much rather have better educated board members playing with that money than not. So anytime we have a chance to learn from other people, we should take advantage of that. And anytime we have a chance to teach other people, we should take advantage of it. So that's why I think any of these organizations, we should support, we should challenge, we should attend.
Another debate.
So on the basis that we have a resolution there, that we will have the opportunity to explain, I will withdraw my motion. So you can go now to.
So
Well played.
we're to the presumption that we will be sending someone.
Yes, we can go to the motion to nominate, right?
That seemed reasonable. That seemed well played on Tim's part. All right, so now we need a motion / delegation or delegate
nomination.
Nomination is what I was looking for there for delegate and alternate and help me understand. I don't know that we need to have both.
And I don't know, sometimes at some of these meetings, if the CEO has been attending, they sent the CEO as the alternate as a cost saving decision because there was this one fewer person sent.
Right.
So I don't know, were you planning on?
So I am currently not planning on attending this meeting. If the board would like me to change that plan, I'm happy to do so.
Tim?
So I would nominate Nicole as the primary and Kirsten as the secondary or whatever delegate and alternate. Because they're the ones who authored this and one of them should be there to defend it.
Right. And acceptances of these nominations.
Yes, so that's my motion and I guess it needs a second, right?
I'll second.
And then do you accept the nomination?
I am grateful for the nomination. I'm not interested in going, but Kirsten is, and she, I think, would do a really good job representing this motion and also bringing back good information from the event.
I'll change my motion. Nominate Kirsten and I don't know about it.
We might want to have a second in case I get sick a week before, because it is our alternate before, yeah.
I'm willing to be an alternate. If I have to go, I can. Go ahead. Yeah.
I'll take care of Julia.
Oh, yeah, that's huge. Okay.
I read my motion.
Never mind, I'll go.
So we have a nomination for Kirsten as the delegate and Nicole as the alternate. Do we have any other nominations? So, open sole nominations, have an ascension vote. Is anyone, oh, sorry. Awesome.
I'll move to nominate Kirsten as the primary, as a delegate, and Nicole as the alternate, and they be elected by.
Yeah, so any, I guess any opposed, right?
Yeah, so yeah, if it's ascension voting, if anybody is opposed, please indicate. Joe, do you have a position?
Yeah, I don't think we should be sending anybody.
Okay, all right. So I think we probably identify that. If there's no other objections, we can identify that as 11 to 1.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Thank Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you, Tim, for working through the motion madness. Okay, next item of business, another delegate and alternate to Tri-State Annual Meeting. Should we, does anybody feel like we should make a choice on whether or not we attend this or not? Or should we just move straight into this nomination process? Okay, we'll move into the nomination process. Accepting nominations for, or self-nominations for delegate and alternate to the Tri-State Annual Meeting.
Anybody want to go? Anybody wanna?
I'll nominate Joe.
Respectfully decline.
Do you want to?
I want to go. The reason I have a hesitation is we talked about by the end of when the settlement ends, we'll vote for a tri-state rep. Right now, we have a tri-state monitor. I wanted to separate that out because they're different duties, they're different responsibilities. If that vote happens in March, then I will be on the tri-state board if I'm elected, or somebody else will be on the tri-state board if they're elected. So then we'll have somebody there. So.
Yeah, correct, right?
I mean, we tried to have somebody beyond the board member there, but.
But we do, even if it was our standard director that was going to be the representative, we still need to identify them as the voting representative for the annual meeting.
Okay.
So it's almost at that point would still just be a paperwork thing. Like there's nothing that prohibits our regular monthly director from also being the annual meeting representative, but we just need to separately identify them as a matter of corporate paperwork for Tri-State.
And there's a March meeting before the April 1 Tri-State annual meeting. And that'd be happening then, if we would just do one now, and in which case I would self-nominate.
Self-nominate for the annual meeting.
For the annual meeting.
Yeah. Okay.
I was just gonna nominate.
But the non-self-nominate.
Beat you to the punch. I'm happy to second that. Any other nominations? Anyone for alternate to the meeting?
And it is April Fool's Day, so watch out.
I'll self-nominate for alternate. Please second.
I'll second that.
Okay, any other nominations for the Tri-State annual meeting? Then we'll go through the acclamation process again. Anyone opposed to Kirsten as the delegate and Ted as the alternate? Okay, seeing none, those delegations stand.
Can I make a comment?
Sure, Ted.
This would probably be the last time we would vote in the Tri-State.
Yes.
Yep. Give them help.
Take it seriously.
I don't know that there's any voting, I don't think there's anything on the agenda for voting for the member. I gotta look, I don't remember the agenda. There's not like any bylaws or anything that you have to stand there and do that. There's voices to be heard.
You'll figure it out, might be new. Awesome. Okay, last item on board action, Roundup Foundation bylaw amendment. So I need help on this.
And so to kind of time check, we have about 3 minutes before our scheduled break, and then Matt will be here. How do we want to handle it?
Yeah, Matt, we're looking for Matt around 15 minutes from now, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
So we can, so I can describe the Roundup bylaw amendment. Staff has had a couple suggested changes to the Roundup bylaws. According to the Roundup bylaws, they actually are amended by the LPA board, not by the Roundup board. So prepared a memo and draft changes. One of the primary draft changes was that when these bylaws were drafted almost 30 years ago, the CEO was the only LPA staff member who was allowed to participate. And we suggest as staff, based on the current workload obligations of our CEO, that CEO be allowed to delegate that. There also were some previous bylaw amendments that actually had been approved about 20 years ago that somehow didn't make it into the bylaws. So I've included those in the red lines, but I think you should consider those to have already been made. We will just update that. Did have some suggestions from a director about considering the fact that every other member of the Roundup board is vetted by the LPEA board, either appointed by district or appointed by this board as their 2 board delegates, or selecting the CEO, that there's a bit of authority kind of going away from the board on that one replacement, and what should we do to kind of try and maintain that oversight. I said as a sort of compromise offer that a suggestion might be to have a pre-approved category that the CEO can select from, rather than the sort of time commitment to have the CEO bring their delegates here for kind of repeated, it sort of defeats the purpose of the nimbleness of staff attending that. And so I think a suggestion that I would make relative to the red line that I have submitted is that we allow the CEO to, the CEO or delegate being a department head or higher, right? And that way it's sort of, there's at least some, it's not sort of open to every single employee, and there's some element of board oversight that remains. Another point that was brought up was that we have some confusing language regarding consensus. And I think it is confusing because consensus doesn't legally mean unanimity, but it doesn't really tell you exactly what it means outside of unanimity. So had some suggestions of taking the word consensus where it appears in the bylaws and converting that to either majority, 2/3 majority, or 3/4 majority. I think it'd be sort of, I would say my personal suggestion would be that perhaps a 2/3 majority might be nice for reflecting when this board originally chose consensus, that it meant sort of something perhaps more than just 51%. But I think however anyone would like to sort of address that. But I would say that it would definitely be helpful to have a sort of numeric term rather than something vague like consensus. So those would be the two checks. There was also a question about the references to Roundup being audited and where that audit can be located. And last year's audit is located in the FAC folder in the May meeting. If anybody wants to go see that audit, that was maybe sort of a factual question about where to locate that information as a director. So entertain a motion. Be kind of a little bit complicated at this point. If you wanted to, I'd say perhaps if the movement was satisfied with the amendment to the sort of pre-approved staff level verbiage change of CEO or CEO's delegate at the department head or higher, and then maybe insert your own recommendation of majority, 2/3 majority, or 3/4 majority in replacement of consensus.
Okay, I move that we approve the bylaws of the La Plata Electric Roundup Foundation with the changes that add senior staff members in lieu of the CEO if necessary, and that we do have a 2/3 majority in the place where it says consent, because I think you had a good point there.
Second. So now, Rachel.
Any discussion?
But
Just delegation to department heads, I think is what you used.
Yeah.
Versus what you said.
Thank you.
I think that's more generic because department heads could have different titles. Like, but another way to put it would be staff that report to the CEO.
Would that be all to some level?
Pardon?
Would that be all staff to some level?
I'm not.
So like a CEO direct report.
Anyway,
Friendly amendment?
So it's a friendly amendment to make it CEO or CEO
It's just
direct
a thought.
report.
It's
Sure.
not
Is CEO or CEO direct report is what the
I'm
amendment
just
is.
thinking about from here on out,
Okay.
so we don't get so restricted.
Perfect. Yeah, that's great. I
Okay.
just wanted to make sure I knew what the
Yep.
wording was.
So that sounds good. So,
Would it include the attorney?
so we'll use that as a sort of friendly amendment to the motion of, the clause would be CEO or CEO direct report and serve as the roundup director staff level.
Resecond.
Resecond.
Any other comments or questions?
Give you some practice.
All those in favor?
Aye.
It's unanimous.
Right,
Yes.
voila. Motion.
Brilliant job.
Thanks.
Right on the schedule. It brings us to our break.
Right,
VP, can we have a
now
break?
we're taking a break. We're gonna come back in a hot minute. What are we doing?
Have a break. I mean, if you want to have a break,
When do
let's
you
have a
want
break.
us back?
10 minutes from now. Will you hear me, Adam? So attorney update on FERC and related items.
The sleeping case has settled. That's kind of going through the FERC review process now. On the rate case side, we are monitoring that case. There is a meeting coming up on March 3rd and 4th to continue the discussion there. And then there's a status update that is owed to the administrative law judge on March 7th, but no specific movement there, and we can certainly talk about it more in executive session. With respect to the appeals of the FERC order that are going on in the 10th Circuit Court of Appeals in Denver are moving forward now. Yesterday, along with United Power, NRPPD, and Mount Parks, we filed our response brief in support of FERC against Tri-State. Tri-State is seeking a wide variety of remedies from the court against FERC, so we're in that case to support FERC. We have a subsequent brief that is in support of a United Power appeal on March 20. It's all consolidated into the same case. So that's really the next big item there. The only other update on the appeal side is, there's been quite a bit of back and forth with respect to Tri-State's compliance filings. So Tri-State has now appealed one of the FERC orders about their December 5th compliance filing, also into the 10th Circuit. The intervention window for that is open right now. We are evaluating a potential intervention really along the lines of the same way we're participating in the other 10th Circuit Court of Appeals cases. So those are really the key updates for public session. Can take any questions, or we're going to jump to executive session.
Some questions. Joe.
So with all the appeals going on, does this, and we're about a year out from our termination payment, is that date in question, or are we contractually still there and then see what happens after, or what?
Correct. So it doesn't affect the exit date. Essentially, the position of La Plata Electric, no different than the position of Mountain Parks or United Power for that matter. The exit would go through as scheduled. We're actively working with Tri-State to facilitate that. And then the appeal will be adjudicated, when the court reaches a decision on it. No specific time frame for when we expect that right now, but it does not affect the exit date.
Yeah, and with all the, there's so many lawsuits going on now, going to federal court. Are we looking at 5 years or 10 years, do you think, before this stuff gets adjudicated?
I don't think it'll be that long. I would expect, decisions, within, from right now, call it 12 to 18 months, but it's very hard to say. There's no specific deadlines. And once you're in a court of appeals structure at the federal level like we are right now.
Thanks.
Could I just add a quick factual note, sort of Joe triggered for me about moving the contract termination date and stuff, was that Mountain Park's termination date was actually beginning of this month. And it went so smoothly that I had forgotten about it and hadn't heard anything about it. And so Matt sort of triggered me with one of reviewing one of their updates, these filings he's talking about, was they sort of moved Mountain Park, their references to mountain parks to the past tense. And I was like, oh yeah, that happened. And it was smooth enough that it didn't even really register with anybody.
Agree with that.
Rachel?
Do we have any, what are we calling it, new presidential administration risk? I don't mean it. I saw that there's an executive order that all agencies now have to go through the president, something, blah, blah, blah. And then I know there's a new head of FERC. So what, if any, impact will that have on us?
That it's very, very hard to say that right now. I mean, what I can say publicly is, if you kind of look at La Plata Electric's position vis-a-vis having a FERC jurisdictional wholesaler, we're on the back nine of that relationship. And, there will be an exit from that wholesale relationship. And I think that all else being equal, you're going to have less things running through FERC than you might otherwise had you remained in the relationship. So, but I think there's a lot of uncertainty on that front. I would expect, litigation about even some of the items that occurred yesterday with respect to the independent agencies and the interaction with OIRA and other, structures within the executive branch. So, that's something, we'll continue to keep an eye on, but I don't forecast right now any, material impacts to any of the things we've been talking about or any of the steps that we've been taking.
Thank you.
Anything else for Matt? Open session? Okay, and then I'll entertain a motion for executive session. Kirsten?
I move we move into executive session to discuss attorney update of FERC related actions, power supply progress, tri-state financial, physical security, and since you said in public, the new administrative risk, in case there was anything you wanted to cover in not public on that.
Did we want to add the high-speed internet?
Dan said no to fast track update. I mean, all I'm saying is Dan said no to that, so anybody else can say yes to it if they want. Motion for executive session. Tim, the second. Discussion on that motion. Okay, all in favor of moving into executive session to cover those topics, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Okay, we will move into executive session. See, I don't see David up there.
That's what I was.
He might have already gone over to executive session.
Right, well, we'll look for him in executive session. Then let's close out public session and try and get David and Matt into executive session.
Yeah, I'll flip over. Thank you.
Thank you. We're back in public session. So no official action coming out of executive session, just one piece of housekeeping. We had a vote to go into executive session, but Director Lucian had already logged off, and we just wanted to make sure and get it on the record that David was in favor of going into executive session, so we could record that as unanimous. Is that true, David?
That is correct. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for cleaning that up with us. All right, so like I said, no actions resulting from executive session. That gets us to item 9 on the agenda, which is reports, starting with attorney report. Graham, what do you have for me?
I'll just refer the board to my written report. Any questions on this?
Right, anything for Graham based on his published report?
Question, the slide of the risk management policy, was that under attorney report, or is that, are you gonna be discussing that, or is that part of the policy?
Yeah,
That was part of the policy committee decision.
But I don't know that, it didn't seem like there was an act to do this.
For what part of this?
Risk policy.
Oh, yeah, no, that was just an update of what Patrick said was the timeline.
No act.
Okay, and that risk management policy slide is basically, here's an example of some things that have to be, that we will be considering, is that what that was?
So I think now he's referring to a document that was in our board.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
and I think that was the actual policy, the draft policy.
So are we doing,
It wasn't from any-
doing anything?
There's no action on that at this point. That is still a draft.
Okay,
We're still working through with our consultants on
He was making sure you read the package.
That, nothing else for Graham? Nothing else for Graham? Okay, then on to director reports. Who wants to start? Who has anything, who has any questions about the submitted reports? Anybody take it if they want it.
So, roundup, we had a lot of requests, didn't have enough money, have to make those hard choices. Working on those, on how to make those hard choices. There's a retreat coming up, and it's a fabulous board. That foundation board is really fabulous. I think we've all been blessed with their generosity of time.
Good to hear. Thank you for that update. Anybody else? Rachel, what do you got?
We're just gonna say, one thing to consider as you go on a retreat, because I know Roundup doesn't usually cover general operating funds. So with the current freeze on a lot of folks' funding, like it could be an interesting topic to broach as a temporary support.
Digging into the general.
Like that orgs could apply for emergency funding to support as they try to wait this out, hopefully don't shut down
Because of the new administration.
the current
impacts.
freeze thing.
Thank you.
Any question? Dan?
I'm trying to pull up the roundup reports on my on board and I get Western United.
It's in the one that got published yesterday because Kirsten forgets things like roundup reports, submitted it on Sunday. So, sorry, sir.
Need to update my on board.
Good answer, I guess.
Bad answer, but
Yeah.
the reality.
Rachel, again?
This is just a silly one, but on page 90, it's the net increase in roundup accounts, the math's off. Thinking on.
Okay, thank you. I'll check that. Thank
Says
you.
there's 898 in your accounts, and I think it's 166.
Okay. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else for director reports? Holly, do you want to chime in on anything or just let it stand as published?
Well, I do have a report in the board packet. I don't know how it got in there. Thank you, Janelle, because I was late on that submission. It was going to continue on to an annual meeting report, but I did not get there either. Let me see. The class, I have a class report in my brain. It was a pretty good class overall. You know, it's interesting because it talked about everywhere from when the cooperatives were created all the way through industry policy. So that was kind of interesting. However, I found that it needs to be written to include the next steps of the and from what I understand, it is being rewritten. The class is being rewritten right now. They just don't have the new version out. I don't know. I think, Western United. I was the Western United delegate. Western United is doing fabulous. They are, every time I go to a meeting, they seem absolutely rock solid. Their staff that is always there is helpful and knowledgeable, and all the reports that Dave put in the board packet are still legitimate for that Western United meeting. They've got record sales right now. Yes, ma'am?
Is it fair to say that they're starting to get more nervous about transformers than they were at this point last year?
No, I don't think that that's necessarily the case unless you're talking about big transformers. The three phases.
Yeah, the ones they sell.
Yeah, the one phases are not
Okay.
a problem right now.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Okay, anything else for director reports? Kirsten?
Is Tri-State a director report or is it on its own?
Um,
I'm not sure. It must be because it's with CREA.
it is occasionally a director report, so you can bring up tri-state business.
Okay, so I have the Tri-State report in here. I just wanted to highlight a couple things. Basin, who Tri-State buys a lot of electricity from, is considering leaving FERC. Right now, Tri-State, because they are in legal disagreements with FERC, is getting locked out of several discussions at FERC, so they're feeling that pain. There was a lot of discussions on true up versus deferred revenue. There's some folks who are saying, no, let's go ahead and true up now. Let's quit using deferred revenue and let's feel the pain now. So that discussion is going on, and I think it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And one very cool thing is they had 81% renewable penetration in May, some date in May at 8 a.m. So the wind was still blowing, the sun was shining, and that was very cool. They're sponsoring to take a lot of folks to DC for a fly-in to lobby for those funds, because $56 million is a lot of money. It doesn't mean the end, but it's a lot of money that this would cost them if they lose that. And I'd seen a thing about the CFC bylaw change, taking out 2 NRECA appointed seats and trying to make them ones that are elected. The tri-state rep at CFC is very for it. I think I gave my opinion for it and nobody seemed to say, well, no, let's not do it. So I don't know, Graham, do you just do that? It's a paperwork thing. Who does that actual vote that goes off to CFC in the mail?
Yeah, it's a proxy, right?
Okay.
But I would think that the board would need to take, like, I'm not in a position to
Okay,
cast that vote myself. That would be,
Okay.
the board would need to.
well, it is a bylaw change and I think theirs is later in the year, like April or May. I don't know when the CFC is. But it is actually something that the board of directors of CFC is really trying to get it out there. I don't know if they're expecting NRECA to fight back or not, because these are NRCA appointed seats that they're trying to get rid of. I don't know if they're expecting to fight or not.
So it looks like CFC annual meeting is June 30th to July 2nd. So I think we have some time to consider that and the board can make a decision on how.
Let's look into what kind of action is needed.
I don't think it's a lot of work, but just something, okay? And lastly, they're starting to do their financials and their operations reports in executive session. They're allowing directors and member directors to be in those executive sessions. But then it ends up that all that information, I have to do really high level things, like there was 81% penetration, those stuff that are done. So do read your reports, because there's some pretty interesting stuff in there as far as where they're doing financially, what they're doing with their renewables and such. And then, of course, because I'm not on the tri-state board and nobody's on the tri-state board from LPA, we get kicked out to do the real secret stuff with that. So that brings up for me something that we talked a couple months ago, which was, once we go into settlement, let's do a tri-state rep. At that time, we said, well, we're not out of settlement yet, so let's just wait on this. I had asked to put it on the agenda but I asked too late, but I asked 2 days ago. And the concern was, I'm about to make a motion unless you guys don't want me to make a motion. The concern was, we need to give everybody a chance to say, oh yeah, I wouldn't be on the tri-state. I mean, I'm always the one lobbying and giving the information. But if somebody needs to have this next month to consider, I won't put a motion up now to select an appointee to be the tri-state rep. Does anybody need more time, or as I'm about to make a motion?
So you can't make a motion. Executive just.
We're back in public
We're in
session.
public session.
Oh, we're- what's the, why would we want to have a rep? I don't understand why we want to have a rep.
I think if we're gonna discuss it, we should just go ahead and entertain the motion.
Okay.
Move that we select a representative to become Sorry, be on the tri-state board.
Moved and seconded. Okay, discussion.
Why?
That was my question.
Yeah, why? I believe that we can make change from within. I believe that LPA being on that board for the 6 years that I've been on, you've been in LPA and you've been on 2 years more than that, right? That we, thank you. Yeah, that we actually do make a difference. That when I look back at my voting record, and when I see what amendments I tried to make and what dissenters, if you just Google dissent, you normally will see my name there. And it's not, and I don't feel, and I feel that I am heard. I'm still very much in the minority, but I think we are heard. We changed that board. That board is not the same board it was 6 years ago. And we changed it. We brought in Mr. Hiley. We said we're not a no organization, which we were. The Dr. No was the head of the power supply now, but it has now become kind of Dr. Maybe, Dr. Yes, Dr. Maybe. So I think we can make changes, and I think it's incumbent on us. We still, for the next year, are going to be buying 95% of our power from Tri-State. We still have a responsibility as a member. I attend annual meetings for my credit union because I'm a member. I want to have a voice. Is my voice made deadly? Absolutely not. But it's democracy for heaven's sake. I think we should have somebody there exercising our rights.
For 1 year.
1 year. So that's why.
My piece of the debate is I'll take a pragmatic approach to it. Is we did vote to have a monitoring position, which Kirsten fills, and we pay for that, and you get half of the information or 2/3 or whatever you can get as a monitor, but not a board member. And if we make this change, then you get access to more information and we don't spend as much money. So to me, it's a pragmatic decision. I respect everything you're saying about why you think LPA should be there, but to me, this is a pretty simple step forward. Saves us money and keeps us doing what we already agreed that we should be doing.
So it's board, monitor, or nothing.
Well, we currently have a monitor, so I mean, the motion isn't to withdraw the monitor as it is. I think the motion is basically to convert. We wouldn't have a monitor if we would with the board director. And sort of for context, right, it was the recommendation of our litigation counsel when we were in litigation with Tri-State to not send a director to Tri-State because there was a potential for, inadvertent statements that could be attributed to the co-op. That risk is gone now that we have settled that lawsuit.
So that was my question. Is that risk really gone?
The lawsuit is settled and dismissed.
No other issues in terms of our negotiations upon exit?
No, because all of our settlement negotiations are non-litigation, or all of our exit negotiations are non-litigation based. And if for any reason we had to resume litigation, it would be on a different claim, right? We know that we've sort of left some levers to pull as in our settlement, but that would be a totally different.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Rachel?
I think Joe was up.
Please go ahead.
I was just gonna ask, did we, from a budget standpoint, are these expenses covered in our?
There
budget?
are no, that's what next
This
Ted
would
was
go
saying.
negative for us.
Oh,
Right
okay.
now, there's $240 a month for 2 days of
Yeah.
director time. There will be
Pay for our
zero.
reps.
Yeah, so we're paying for all those other directors to go right now, but we're not paying for one of ours to go.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
John?
I would vote that we completely withdraw from Tri-State's participation at the board level, even as a monitor. And the reason is, I disagree with you, Graham, that we're not free from that. If they enter bankruptcy and we are on the board, even if we have information it's discoverable, we'll get dragged into BK. There's depositions, all sorts of further we get away from them, that is a ship that is going to sink. It's my belief that the further we get away from them, the faster we get away from them, the better it is for us and our leadership. My 2 cents.
If I might add a comment from my old life. What I saw with Tri-State, the turning point for Tri-State was the change in state law in 2019. So I'm not sure the board dynamic at that point. I don't think Tri-State changed from within. I think they now have to meet state law. And I think Dwayne has gotten a bad set of cards and he's doing the very best he can with that bad set of cards is kind of how I look at it. But if you look at their actions in Wyoming and their actions in Nebraska and their other states, the change to me was very clearly the change we made in state law. And Tri-State has to meet those requirements and is now scrambling to do the best they can with this massive amount of $3 billion on its way to $4 billion worth of debt. So I just think we're in a different spot. And this is not disparaging Tri-State in any way, but I think the turning point was a set of policy discussions that I happened to be a part of in 2019. Go ahead, Rachel.
Do you have response to John's, like that to me feels like a legal thing.
I mean, I think that, I appreciate John's point, right, of sort of, I don't know that, I mean, my only basis for this, right, is my review of the historical context of the Colorado youth bankruptcy and how it played out, right? I have fairly decent historical familiarity with that. I was like a senior in high school when it happened, so I don't have a personal familiarity with it. But I also, the name is escaping me, but there was, Texas G&T that went through bankruptcy based on Winter Storm Uri and stuff. Brazos, yes. And I haven't been paying quite as much attention to that. Those are the two real sort of guideposts for what a bankruptcy can look like. And so, but I would say that it's, that there was absolutely sort of a lot of sort of board level engagement on that Colorado youth bankruptcy 30 plus years ago, and so, I mean, it's not risk-free. I will acknowledge that I don't have the capacity to say like exactly what bankruptcy would play out for Tri-State if it was something that happened and what exactly that would entail for us. But I can safely say that John is correct to identify that as a risk.
So isn't that regardless of whether we have
I mean, I think
on the board?
But I think, John does have a point of like, well, if you don't have somebody on the board and they're not attending board meetings, then they can't really be deposed to sort of ask questions or have investigation and follow up. I mean, to kind of contextualize the talking points that he had, I think we're all correct, right? Like if something like that happened, which I'm not really in a great position to opine on its probability anyway. But, I mean, it's not out of the question that there would be a discovery process that would involve time and effort for us to participate in where, the answer would be, we weren't there, we don't know right now.
So if you let me go one step deeper, and then please correct me if you're reading the landscape differently. TJ Neal, so EK in the last 5 years.
Yeah.
There is you don't want to be on. Thank you. You don't want to be on the deck when there's a bankruptcy. You don't want to be in the leadership position when there's a bankruptcy, even if you're protected by governance law. There's inevitably shareholder lawsuits. There'll be claims of malpractice, bad faith, conflicts of interest, just in the nature of people trying to extract value from the process, regardless of its merits, right? There are lots of ways that even a well-meaning, good actor sitting in a board position who has ultimate fiduciary responsibility for an organization that enters and exits bankruptcy, for the organization that they represent to become encumbered with legal complexity of all sorts and sizes. That is not true if you're not part of the leadership anymore. I believe that there is value in what you're identifying, which is participating in the democratic process, having a voice, having an ear, but that the actual material risk to the organization far exceeds the value that you would capture from that participation. So I would offer at least a moment to say, did anything I say, you can disagree with me, but did anything I say in there ring is factually inaccurate?
No, I would say that's all correct. I unfortunately can't give you guys quality advice on numerical value of how to weigh this. You have to sort of weigh it, qualitatively.
Our risk policy wouldn't cover this.
Yeah, I mean, at a certain point, it probably wouldn't, right? And so it's sort of like the risks that John is describing is not zero, and the values that Kirsten is describing are not zero, but I can't give you a number other than not zero. You'll all have to weigh this individually about your own best estimate.
Well,
I was gonna let.
yeah. So if we continue to, the middle of the road approach with the monitor, we still get a lot of value of like this, what Tri-State's up to, and that's what, less than $5,000 a year, somewhere right around yeah. So it's, yeah. So, I mean, that's an option.
And it is budgeted.
And it's budgeted.
Here's better.
Like,
Better off.
like to put a little weight on the non-zero part of it, so. When Colorado, you went bankrupt, one of the reasons they went bankrupt is because their directors refused to raise rates. Because they weren't gonna raise the rates, they don't wanna raise rates because they didn't want their members to have to pay more also. Tri-State with going to FERC and with going to a formula-based rate, basically will have to raise rates to meet budget. Budget says, this is what it takes to run, this is what we're going to do. So I know, I know that you think they're on the verge of bankruptcy in the next 5 years. And I don't see that and I urge you to look at their numbers, look at their balance sheet, look at their debt load, and even without the new ERA money, I think I'm not worried about the bankruptcy piece. So, and if I was, I would be then cautious about any time we go into agreement with somebody, so like we're gonna be dealing with folks who may go bankruptcy that we're gonna be buying energy from. So do we always say, oh my God, they could maybe go bankrupt, we have to stand back. So that's my weight.
There's an important subtle difference there. Is one, you're on the leadership, one's a vendor, and one, you're a member of the leadership. That's a very important difference in these matters. Vendors go bankrupt all the time, right? When you're on the deck, it's a totally different ballgame. It's a totally different ballgame when that happens. And if you look at the Pacific Gas and Electric bankruptcy in 2019, 18, it was because of the fires, right? Do you think that Tri-State's going to survive a major catastrophic fire on the scale of the Camp Fire fires or which is happening in Pacific Palisades? If they are pegged with the burden on that, they're not set up to survive that kind of a fight. You don't want to be any part of that leadership. You don't want to be anywhere near that organization. To say nothing without, yes, I'll stop. That is my opinion.
Okay.
That's how I'll be voting.
Yeah. Super. I appreciate that. And do we survive a big fire in our area? Well, I mean, but it's the same. It's not. It's if we're saying we could go bankrupt, and I'm on this board, and thank you very much for your concern for my.
No, the motion on the table is to whether or not to do that.
Oh, okay.
Dan, did you have something?
Yeah, that's probability of Tri-State going bankrupt in the next 8 months is probably nil to none. Filing for bankruptcy, so I don't see any risk at this point. We'll be gone next year.
Tim,
could I ask what, if any, impact you think, Chris, for your staff might be one way or another?
Yeah, I'd be happy to address that. We've had some great discussions about, kind of the staff interaction with peers. I guess that to me is a slightly different discussion, which is about our involvement in other groups. Our tri-state board or not board, I don't think has an impact on those staff relationships with our peers.
Okay.
Yeah, that's much more at CREA, NWPPA, NRECA, et cetera.
This is a hill, by the way, I'm not prepared to die on.
Yeah.
Just offering. There are other
We got other
hills. You've
hills.
seen me want to die on a hill. This is not one. Just-
Anything else before we go to?
And this is just for, we want the position, and then we need to figure out.
Then we need to have a
who-
nominee and go through the selection
Yeah,
process.
and so,
I don't know.
yeah, so I mean, just to clarify the motion, if so, yay means that we do want to have a tri-state board member to appoint LPA, have a board member on tri-state. Nay means we stick with status quo, which is now Kirsten as the tri-state monitor. That's what we're voting on. Dan?
Legal question.
Mhm.
Being this wasn't on the agenda, can we vote on
I think that's a good question. It wasn't noticed and we didn't amend the agenda.
It is part of a report, and anytime a board member wants to act, and they have to make a motion.
And I think, so I think for that part, right, Kirsten does have a good point, right, is that she brought this up in conjunction, that we don't notice every single motion that we have because sometimes things arise. And so for this particular decision, I would say that it is, I understand your concern and I recognize it, but I think that it's, especially at this particular juncture to be able to bring something to the floor under the heading of her tri-state report seems reasonable.
And I would just think if anyone objected to taking this action right now, we wouldn't take this action. And I think that's on the table. We cannot have this vote. I think that's what you tried to ask at moment one, and we didn't get any objections to that, but I think it's fair to ask it again. I mean, does anybody feel like we're not prepared to take this action? All right.
call for the question?
We'll just do it. Yeah, so we don't have to vote on calling for the question.
You have to vote twice then.
Yeah. All right, then, everyone's clear on the motion. All in favor of the motion, raise your hand and say aye.
Aye.
So let's
Keep your hands up, please.
1, 2, 3 in favor of reinstating a tri-state director.
And then all opposed.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Okay.
Skip.
That's 6.
So
Asked and answered, thank you.
So, question then, the monitoring position is remain.
yeah, so that was our status quo activity.
All right, anything else to finish out director reports? Anything, or, yeah, you got something on director reports?
Yeah, I have to bring it back. Talks along the thing. There was an employee benefit, 2024 employee benefit programs. I don't know if we discussed that now or not. It was a report, 2024 employee benefit programs, it's part of the board packet. And I appreciate there's a report. I'm not sure how helpful this was to me as a board member, to be honest, because there's really nothing in here that speaks to results, satisfaction info, cost benefit. So, thinking like the FAC here, I guess. But it's just a list of here's the programs and how it aligns with our strategic plan, and that's it. Both of which are useful information, but I'm not sure what I'm supposed to do with it.
You want to speak to that, Elizabeth?
I can, I mean,
Can.
yes, I can. So, last year, this is a report that we make annually. Last year, sort of realized
I don't think we made it in a couple of years during COVID times. And so we opted into the board packet and did it again this year for our notes to get it in there. You know, I think it says what it says. I mean, we have a very rich benefit program here. We do use it to retain top talent. Our employees are very pleased. We try to add new components to it when possible. If there's, I don't know that we, there's not a lot of, I mean, some of those things are just things we subscribe to. You know, our benefits plan, we're self-funded, so we do have a good performance, but that's all incorporated in our budget. Not sure what other type of information you.
Well, I mean, from the budget context, that is a board responsibility to approve that budget.
Yeah.
And just like we would with a capital item for transmission rebuild or whatever, we're looking at a cost benefit aspect to that, you know, so we're approving expenditure of a particular category and we're expecting a certain result. And I just was like to get some idea of, are these benefits producing the result as expected? And what is the cost benefit for the benefit program, so to speak? And so I'm looking at it from a fiduciary kind of viewpoint, you know, and it's nice to know we have them and they're used for retention and so forth. And I don't want to stick my finger too far into that pie, but I do want to be assured that when it's a part of the budget that we rarely, even in fact, we just, you know, it's sort of like, here's the salaries, here's this, we got to do this, right? We can say, well, you can have more staff or you can't, but as to the effectiveness of the programs that we provide for employees, that would be a helpful bit of data in this report. That's my.
So Tim, I hear that loud and clear. Elizabeth and the team, we've been taking a fresh look at this package. It's one of the things I had put on my initial to-do list. And we are actively looking at some options right now. So if it's all right, we'll continue that process and bring that back to the fact and the board to answer that very good question. Thank you.
And we do that pretty regularly.
Yeah.
On various components.
Yes, I would be surprised if you weren't doing that. And then I have another question on a different report.
Yeah, keep going with reports.
So there was a report on wildfire, what utilities need to know in Portland. And at the very end of the report, thank you very much. You put your name and who authored it, because I'm going to this going, who was this person?
It's kind of shocking to me you haven't recognized my style yet.
Well, I was suspicious. Very suspicious. I like confirmation. And it's a very comprehensive report. There's a lot of really good info in here, and I'm really gratified that you took the time to put this in here. Did you attend this in person?
Yes, I did.
Okay, so and this was one that we approved that you said you want to go because not as an official, but on your own discretionary.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I guess my overall question is, what, if anything, do you think we should do with this information you've had? Because there's some really interesting stuff in there.
Yeah.
Like, are we better off funding an energy transition in exchange for wildfire mitigation for reducing overall emissions? I mean, that is a big question.
Well,
So I'm just looking, a report's one thing. Is there a recommendation out of this that we should do something or go somewhere else?
I will say I talked to Chris. I got our wildfire protection plan. And then I went through it, I read the whole thing, and I highlighted everything that I felt like was missing from best practices that I took from the conference. And then I passed that back.
Okay.
But I'm glad you asked about it, because I wanted to just very quickly just explain, part of, I want to go to NWPPA because I wanted to see, so far I'd only gone to NRECA things. And I will say I found it to be a much more valuable experience. I think the combination of IOUs, munis, public utilities, and rural electric cooperatives, there's a lot more information from different perspectives shared. And then there's definitely a different aesthetic there where when you go to NRECA, there's kind of this feeling like sometimes I feel like there's like, it's a paid vacation. There's like these like speakers talking about like poker games and like, am I at a rave event or is this like a corporate thing? It was just kind of a strange, whereas this was like 100 people in a small ballroom. I felt really, like there was still like an element of networking and conversation, which is very valuable, but it was much more like, I felt like focused to do work. And I also thought one thing that I wasn't prepared for, but was a takeaway was some of warnings with the unintended consequences of progressive policy, because it's primarily California, Oregon, Washington. And so you're in a room with people who are governed by the far left. And yet these are, practical, like these are practitioners of a very practical science, you know what I mean? And so to see that disconnect where you have this lofty idea, but then be like, well, this is how it actually, how it plays out. I thought that was there's really good value for us to attend these kind of things. So I was grateful that I got to go. And like I said, it was hard for me to feel like going to an NRECA event would be worth my time after going to what I felt like was a really solid 2 days of quality conversations that I got to bring things back to our board.
Okay, could I ask a couple more questions about the content of the report? Is that okay? Sure.
Yeah.
So I noticed in here, what page is it on? Mine are probably out of order from yours, but it's the, what is it? It's 151 of 155 on my earlier version, so I'm not sure where it is in the overall board. But there's a powering up public power. Public power expands beyond BPA supply. You used the term geothermal in there as the best complement to solar. And I'm not sure, we use this geothermal interchangeably, but there's two different versions. One is an exchange, geothermal exchange, where you transfer heat. The other is an actual generation. And I wasn't sure which one you were. Geothermal is the best complement to solar. Do you recall?
No, it was like very like big picture portfolio they were talking about.
All right. And I would just ask people, when we use that term geothermal, to be specific about what you're talking about, similar to a heat pump out of the ground, which is a transfer versus, put steam and run a generator.
And if it makes you feel any better, the governor messes this up all the time.
Well, following that question, I think it would probably be the former, because it's talking about there's a greater delta when it's cold.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted to put it. Thank you.
Yep.
There was another one about how to maintain inertia on the grid. It's the very end.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't know, it sounds like a game.
Well, there was somebody who was kind of devil's advocate in the room, and he was talking about, we had a grid that was being fueled by renewables, would we lose the spinning inertia? Like, how can you maintain that? They've talked about synthetic inertia, like with Hertz, I believe, is like what the issue is.
Yeah, it's a big thing. Like, how do you detect a fault when there's no fault current? That's one thing. So that they're talking about different relays that are looking for waveform distortions instead of just amplitude and different things. It's something when you hit a certain penetration. You're not there yet.
Well, I've heard we weren't there yet before, and then we found out we were at some place like that. So how far away are we then?
A long ways.
Okay.
Yes. And things like geothermals, carbon sequestration, and peakers, those are also inertia.
Spinning.
Spinning elements.
Yeah. So
And so with
geothermal,
hydro.
the latter.
Yeah.
So one last question is it's under energy forecasting. And it says somebody's name is actually Crystal Ball.
Yeah, it is.
And I was just wondering,
Oh my God, that's a real
you were
thing.
just putting that in there to see whether we read this report.
Oh, my gosh.
Yes, I've met Ms. Ball. She actually exists. I'm pretty sure she changed her name, but she claims she didn't.
Well, it is energy forecast.
That's right. That's right.
We should bring her here for some more discussion.
May have married into.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you for the questions.
Rachel?
Yeah, I think I also really appreciated this report and I'm glad that you connected with Chris because so much of it seems very operational and staff oriented. But one of the things, Chris, you mentioned you're meeting with the Forest Service director. Hopefully we'll get to keep them. And, but bringing together a consortium of interested parties, close gap on funding for bigger projects, counties, water and power utilities, FS, watershed protection groups. Do we have coordinated wildfire mitigation kind of entities, coalitions, consortiums, working groups down here?
Firewise.
Yes.
Yeah,
And is LPA a part of it, I guess?
Wow.
yeah, I actually, John and I had breakfast a few days ago, and this is one of the questions I have as I'm getting up to speed is where are those conversations happening and to make sure we're in the right place at the right time? Because I am sensing some real communication gaps. John confirmed that for me, and we're gonna figure out how we can fix that. It feels like we've got some vulnerabilities right now.
And they do exist.
Yeah.
Just, it would be great, these reports are great report. It took me a while to figure out what you, just be nice if you, a paragraph, I attended such and such, just to, it was, because I was like, why am I seeing this? And,
Okay.
yeah.
Also, they recommend goats, just
Yeah.
saying.
I'll take a selfie in front of the sign.
I think you'll be a little better looking.
Sorry.
All right.
Already along.
Yeah. Does anybody have any other, you're still on, Tim? If you want it.
Yeah, thank you. And then Western Power Players, right? It's kind of a new entity organization as far as I'm aware. I mean, I know, not for you. And, you know, you got an invite to appreciate the report. And, but, you know, could you get just a little more background about what is the intent, motivation around this? So that we have something in public that doesn't sound like an organization doing something power.
I mean,
And either one of you.
it's Chris's organization,
Yeah,
right? I mean, yeah, I would prefer if you just describe why you created it, what it's supposed to do.
Yeah, it's definitely not a backroom organization doing anything untoward. No, it's something that I started 8 years ago with two other co-founders. And I serve on the board of it. I'm obviously not employed by it, but I've been involved with it for a long time. And the Western Power Players event we started, this was the 7th gathering. And it's really focused on trying to address grid issues in the WEC. So the Western Electricity Coordinating Council, right? So Colorado to the Pacific, these 11 states that we are part of a synchronized grid. And so we've been looking at organized markets, day-ahead markets, grid enhancing technologies, virtual power plants, really just trying to look at all the ways to increase reliability at the lowest possible cost. And this meeting that we just had was focused on grid enhancing technologies, and reconductoring was a major piece of it. And so that's essentially the short story.
Perfect, thank you.
And I would just add to that, it sounds, I mean, I would make a similar comment to the comment that Nicole made. You know, it's a relatively small group, 100-ish, 120 or something like that. So, you know, very target-rich environment. You can have conversations with a lot of different people. The other thing that I would bring back to you all was, I don't think there was one person in that room who I talked to and mentioned LPA who didn't know who LPA was and what processes we were going through. So that was shocking to me. It was a very diverse group of people, you know, kind of across the West, and whether we know it or not, people are looking. Anything else before we sign off? Couple more, Kohler.
Yeah, so I want to bring up the co-op network, innovation network that you.
Yes, other organizations.
Yes, it's another organization, and I was very embarrassed, got called. It was on a Friday night that you were doing your gathering in Denver. And I said, I didn't know anything about it, but your chairman is the founder, CEO was a speaker, and the director is speaking there. And I just want to say that the perspective part of it, even at the CREA meeting, is that, what are you guys doing? What is this up to? I can't answer that. And I think just like our member said today, how important transparency is, maybe this does have nothing to do with LPA, but that's not the perception. And perception becomes reality. It destroys trust. Let me just put it that way. I felt really, defenseless with this thing. So I wanted to bring that up. I think there should be consideration down the road if things like this happen, so that we aren't caught off guard. Enough said.
Point taken. Did you have something, Dan?
Well, I just wondered if anybody knows the reason that we've lost 800 and some odd Roundup participants over 2024. From June to December, it was just a steady decline. More and more just kept rubbing off.
Maybe we ask the Roundup directors to try and come back to us next month with some sort of, if there's any type of explanation that can be had, right? I mean, everybody gets to choose whether they're on or off, on their bill. But to see a
board packet under last slide on the Roundup.
Yeah, there was a big effort I don't know how long that effort was, Amanda, always encouraging Roundup, and I imagine that effort is still going on. So it'd be interesting to take a look, and I'll definitely take that for action, Dan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks for identifying it. Anything else before we sign off? Joe?
Do we have a cow coming up sometime?
Nothing on the schedule.
Didn't we talk about one in March prior to the?
I think it was confused with the last meeting, the last Friday, 2 Fridays ago, last Friday. I think where I got confused. It's a special meeting in the cow, that's what, yeah.
Yeah, I think that's an option. I'd say, to John's question, if the board would like to have a cow scheduled, we'd be very happy to get that set up if folks want to have that setting for more discussion on the tariff changes.
If I might be able to speak to it for just a second, John, but we've sort of noticed our public comment period with the idea of having staff have some time to assemble that the comments into a packet for the board, and the board have time to read those before the vote that occurs at the March meeting. And so that was sort of, we've kind of advertised this timing element of, you can get your comments into us by March 16th. We will have collated them as staff and distributed them to the board, so the board won't just sort of like be reading them contemporaneously at the March meeting, but we'll have a few days to digest it before the March meeting and the vote on the full rate.
Does anybody think we need a cow before the next meeting for rate design? Kirsten?
I do. Coming out of the last cow, and it was mostly an executive session, so I have to keep it as generic as possible. There were at least 2 directors who said, have we looked at doing it this way? Can we do it that way? And to address some of the concerns we heard from our members, which was, how can you best do your tariffs so that they have the least impact on those who harm the most? And I think we're doing that work. It's not been public work, but I think that that work, those trade-offs need to get talked about. And I think that there were 2 things that we said, well, we'll do that maybe eventually, but I'm not settled that when it comes up like March, that we have perhaps the best Sheriff, and we're gonna read these things, and I bet you, well, I don't know what I'm gonna see. But I think there were some open stuff left after that last cow. Is everybody else more resolved than I am?
Are you talking about the cow or the special meeting?
Special meeting.
Oh, sorry, you're right, it was a special meeting, because it had to be an executive session noticed and all of that, because we wanted to.
And it needed action
Yes,
coming out.
exactly, okay, so sorry. So in that special section, there was some stuff coming out of the executive portion of that section where some directors had talked about perhaps some alternatives. There was yeah, maybe we could look at that. And what happens when we don't finalize those things and say, okay, you actually look at it, is then we're disappointed, but we never gave clear guidance. And then we say, well, we thought we gave you clear guidance. Well, no, you never exactly said it. So we came out of that with perhaps some things like tier price on energy based upon usage levels and stuff like that. Some things. So I think there's homework to do. I can do that homework by myself. I mean, we can all do it by ourselves, but I think we do better when we do it as a group.
Tim?
Yeah, I think I hear what you're saying, Kirsten, but we came out of that and we took a vote and we published it.
Right, we took a vote to post it because we knew we could make changes. And it was said, we could make changes.
That is correct. Under the
Yeah,
policy,
absolutely.
what was posted is not obligated to be final draft, and you can make adjustments based on input from the members.
Yeah.
But I think, just to finish what I was
Sorry,
saying,
sir.
thank you, that we took a vote, published those rates, and that vote is to hear feedback. And so I think it's worthwhile to consider getting together to consider that feedback. And see if any of those options you're talking about might be useful, but I don't think anyone came away saying, let's pause, finish looking at all these alternatives and then publish rates, right? We said, let's get it out there, get the feedback from the members and then consider.
So I think then I might have more voice as a member than I do as a board member, right? So I say, as a member, this is my feedback. I think we need to do this, this, and this, and then they'll get it in front of them. I would rather we do that as a board, but I can certainly do it as a member, and I encourage each of you to, if we don't have. Do we do this as a group, which again, I think we do things better as a group.
I think from my perspective, I would just say individually, I don't think we need another cow. I think we came out of that cow with exactly the intent of. Well, this would probably be a cow.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
But yeah, so, but not another cow. You're right about that terminology. Our intent coming out of that, in my impression, was to entertain member feedback, and certainly you could have member feedback, and I agree that we all should. And if you remember, I think I did say that we should all walk away from this special meeting and be thinking about all the different levers we want to pull, can pull, but those aren't going to go into this particular rate design. And so we can entertain all sorts of, comments that come back. There's only so many things we can do. We do need to vote on this. We will have time in the March board meeting, to have more discussion on what particular member comments do we entertain, try and incorporate, try and learn from, I guess. But we do need to get to the vote, and so that's where I stand on it. Rachel?
Process and timeline clarification. So we are seeking member feedback. We got a bunch today. And then if we want to consider that, we have to bring it up in March and then somehow incorporate that right then and then vote on it in March. Or is March a discussion? Then if there is any edits, it goes back and we vote in April. I'm seeing a lot of head shakes.
have to vote.
Let's go in March.
To adopt a tariff, right? So if we don't vote, you don't change rates.
So then I did hear a lot of feedback. I agree with Kirsten. I think we heard feedback. And I'm trying to remember in the models we looked at how much we were weighting some of those considerations.
In general, there was a discussion about how base charge can having a higher base charge can be better for those who are energy burdened because they tend to use more electricity, because they tend to be in inefficient housing and are using inefficient equipment. So so that discussion on, well, if we raise this a little bit much, can we bring the energy charge a little bit down? So those folks who can't help but use a lot of energy and can't help but use a lot of energy during that 5 to 10 timeframe, can we do something about it? So there was possibility for play in there, and it was dangled out there that there's a possibility to change these rates before they finalize. So we dangled something to me, and now we're saying, oh, well, yeah, but you know, remember, and we're really not gonna make any changes because it's not down the road. Just a recollection that the last couple of rate changes we have had, we've said, oh, well, eventually we're gonna be looking at demand only. Eventually, we'll be looking at time of use, eventually. And, you know, eventually is here. You had some.
So ongoing discussion about, do we need a cow?
Bandwidth of this team. We got a lot of stuff to do this year. Unless there was something, you guys heard something today, or your hearing membership that would derail the proposed tariff, so that you want to lay down in front of the tracks, in front of the staff's recommendation and say they got it wrong. I want to send them back and make them do something very specific, not just socialize it, not just run through a process. I think we should preserve that. My opinion is that we should preserve our time and our energy and our attention, because we have a lot of other stuff to do this year. And I think allocating another half day to a cow to socialize something that is unlikely to materially change is a poor use of time for the entire team.
My additive piece would, I think we heard the arguments, and I don't think, my opinion, we would have material change if we spent 2 or 3 more hours on this. I think we hammered it, and we, you know, someone said, I think maybe Kohler said, I don't think you could have done better. I don't think you could have done worse.
That's right.
I don't think staff did as good as they could do with the rate increase. And that's where I feel we are. That's why I don't think we need a cow. But that's why we're asking the question of, do we think there's room for material change that would justify having that board discussion? Tim?
So I think there's, you have to look at it from this standpoint. There is potential for material change in the classifications that we have in our current rate structure. Right. But I think what I'm hearing Kirsten say is we should consider changing the rate structure. And we heard from staff that would be premature prior to the exit, that we need more thoughtful time to look at that and to understand the ramifications of that, right? So, because our cost structure will change coincident with that exit, right? So, I mean, I think we should all be open to the idea that, okay, maybe the base charge should be this or that, right? Or that energy rate should be this or that. But the idea that you would add a wholly different rate design and structure, I heard clearly that was not something we could really do in time for an April implementation, nor would it be a good idea to do that until we see what our cost structure looks like beginning in April of 2026.
Well, only cost of service study to inform that.
Yes, and another one. So I don't think a cow's necessary to look at. Do we change? We could probably do that in our board meeting if we need to in March, and maybe eke out a little more time for that discussion. Which is, do we change some of the numbers within this structure?
Yeah, that's what I'm interested in.
Okay.
Is
I'm
trying
going
to
to
influence that change in that.
And I'm sorry you didn't understand that, but I believe we have, well, I wasn't listening to what you were saying. Finish what you were saying.
I agree with Tim. There's not time to do a wholesale change.
Mm-hmm.
I'm disappointed that, 6 years after we started talking about wholesale changes, we're still talking about doing it in the future. I do agree that for this next one, the structure we have and those tweaks that we have, those tools that we have, and say, this is what we do if we change this kind of, was you change the base charge. This is what we do, what happens if we change our peak charge, and this is what happens if we change our energy. Those are flowing rates. And I know I got kicked off a couple of times because I was working out of my car in the city market parking lot. Because I didn't have Wi-Fi, so I missed any of that tweaking that was going on. And I would like to see if we can tweak it a little heavier towards the base rate, which will be unpopular, but will indeed be a little less burden on our energy burden. I'm not sure what to, how to term it. So that's what I would like to try to influence.
And I truly believe that we have that scheduled, that is part of the discussion that we can have based on member feedback, including you as a member.
Super, thank you.
All right, no, thanks for the discussion.
What's the date of the open house? For the town hall? Oh, the town hall
Tomorrow.
in March, do we have a date for that yet?
March 25th.
March 25th.
We'll share that after this meeting.
Oh, it hasn't been announced yet.
Nope.
Okay.
I'll share that with you all before it goes.
Open house or town hall?
The open house is tomorrow, and then there is a town hall.
And then there's coffee with Chris on
Yep.
Tuesday.
Yes.
We're gonna hang out. It's on my calendar.
Anything else, everybody? And we can keep talking after adjournment, but won't be the board meeting anymore. And, oh.
There it is. All right.
Yeah, you wait for Dan to grab it. Sit down.